Carla Merrill, present.
Jason Thielen, present.
Greg Gordon, present.
Lon Lott, present.
Troy Stout, present. It's working. How are you doing there, Austin? Can we get started?
Yeah, someone's
good to
been
go?
someone's been playing with their stuff, changed all our settings.
All right.
You guys,
Okay.
I'm still not seeing a video of City Hall.
Let's
Nah,
let's
should
get
be
squared away
coming.
with that
Okay,
before we
there
move
it is.
forward. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. I've asked Lon Lott to provide the prayer this evening.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this beautiful day, for the small amount of moisture we did receive. We're grateful for the bounties of life thou hast blessed us with. We're thankful for good neighbors, friends, and relations. We're thankful for those who help us in protecting us day by day, and for those who serve our nation in protecting us from those who wish to destroy. We're grateful for those who serve and protect in all areas of our lives. We're thankful for those citizens who participate in these meetings and in service around the community and to their neighbors. We pray for each one of them that they will be blessed with strength and courage and health. We pray now that we will have thy spirit to direct us in our thoughts and actions and emotions. And we pray for this in Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lon. And I've asked our new fire chief, Brian Patterson, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start this evening's meeting with a work session focused on the general plan. I know that while I was away in our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion devoted to this. Some specific questions have been addressed. So let's go ahead and Austin, would you like to introduce the topic and kind of catch us up on where we are?
Yes, so we're working on the general plan. Right now, we're working on the open space element of the general plan. And so we did talk about this topic last time and we made some progress, some good progress on it. So some of the things that we covered last time that the council kind of felt changes that they felt were needed were in section 1.4, we decided to remove the reference to ATVs. And so that those would be not shown as in our parks. 1.6, we decided to add.
Also on that, there was we changed hiking to walking.
That's true, yes. We changed some wording there. Walking trails is, I think, is what we wanted to call them. We have that, for example, we have the new trail that's going in Lambert Park, that walking
Pedestrian
only.
Section
1.6, we added some language in there regarding the trail committee. We thought it'd be a good idea to refer to the trail committee in the general plan, since they're a critical part to what we do in our parks and our trails.
I'm not seeing 1.6 in the electronic. Okay.
That would be a new section, yeah. So
All right.
I guess it goes up to 1.5. In section, skipping ahead to section 2.1.
So hang on a second,
Go ahead.
Mayor, on that. If you look at the comments, Carla had suggested that we promote trail committee involvement, and that was just, and we do that before we get to the end of the line on discussions on it, that we have them involved in the beginning of developments coming in, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what we felt then was important to
Good.
have as a line item.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. So let's see here. So we did have a couple things that we'll want to continue today. Some of those were some comments by Jason Thielen. That we had some questions and just wanted him to be here when we discussed those items. So that included one of his suggestions about access to the mountains. And then also he had some comments on hard surfaces in the parks. And so we wanted him to be here for those. We had some other discussions on some language about leisure.
Yeah, in Austin on the access to mountains, I think there was a little discussion around, I didn't know that door opened. There was a little discussion around, because I think earlier in the general plan, we talked, maybe it was the transportation element, access to the mountains and hillsides. And so we had a little discussion around making sure it was consistent or not duplicative, or maybe it just aligns right along there. Or if it's, you know, the same.
Yeah.
That on the question of whether we need a separate, was it a goal or a policy there? One of the two.
I think ultimately we had some discussion on that, but ultimately I think it was decided maybe a new goal. So we currently have two goals in the parks section, and this would be a new goal to preserve access to the mountains.
Yeah.
And then.
But I think, Jason, I think we had added that earlier in the general plan in the transportation element. And it's not, you know, we could have it in two places. It's just making sure we're consistent or aligned, or ensuring we understand if it's
Yeah,
duplicating
so
or
we
not.
wanted to hear your perspective and how you lay it out.
If I can, again, when I look at the master plan, it's not a process thing. I mean, even putting on, talking to trail committee before we do trails, I don't necessarily feel like that fits into the master plan. I'm fine with it. But the master plan kind of gives us a vision of what we want to strive for as the city. And with relationship to this goal, you're right, that may be there, but all of our trails go into the mountain. I mean, mountain access is an extension of our trail system, and that's our park system. So, you make a good point, Greg. But I just want to say, from a general plan perspective, our goal as a city, our vision of the city should be to maximize as much access to our surrounding open space lands, federal lands. And so I think it made sense to put it in here because the connections we're making to mostly are to trails. So that's why.
So sounds like a good point. I think a key thing Jason just said is that it's, open space as well as trails and hillsides, mountains, and so on. I mean, this may be some of our interior open space.
You see it as a goal then, and not
Yeah.
just
As we make decisions in a city, whether it be approving a subdivision that's on the border of Alpine, that should be one of our goals, is with those PRDs or those developments.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, when you state where your goals are, then a developer, for example, comes in with an idea. At least we have a general statement of what we want to accomplish with any development, regardless. And that preservation of access to the hillsides, to the mountains, and as an extension of the trail, I think is something that's been expressed by the community at various points when we've surveyed them and when we have, just conversations. People want access to the mountains, and I think if we do state that as a clear goal, then we let everybody know that as long as you bring something in that's consistent with this goal, we're going to take a good look at it.
So I think that adds some clarity there. And we have kind of a draft of that language here. I'll just highlight it on the screen.
So along with that goal then, are there specific policies then we would want to have listed under that, or is it just a standalone goal?
Well, I think as I'm looking, I think Austin has written it pretty well here. You know, we want to secure access to those by enforcing, and I don't know if you remember, Mayor, but probably 18 years ago, there was access to the mountains at the end of the cul-de-sac. I think that the Ravens live on, that they just encroached in, and eventually we lost that access just because we didn't enforce it. And so this is the enforcement is, and then preserving once it's set up, and then what it doesn't have there on that list is enforcing, preserving, and maintaining current access, but always striving for more access. I don't know how to put it, but make an effort to increase access to the hillsides.
Yeah, in that particular case, you're right. There were two cul-de-sacs that go up against the mountain. Each was supposed to have had some type of access, and now only one does.
And another one comes to mind in Three Falls. Remember, we had access that was on that trail. They wanted to get rid of that one trail. And in return, the city council said we still need to have access to that. So we were able to work with the developer to I guess, stop that trail, but have them deed over to the city the road up to the water tower, which we didn't really have before. As far as the city had access to it, but citizens might not have had access to it. But that was a decision we did that was based on that.
And I'd add as well, I think mountains, hillsides, trails, open space might be more complete.
So I agree with that. So the only thing that's missing besides what Greg just said is we're enforcing it, we're preserving and maintaining access, but we're also striving for increased access. If the new development comes in, we want access. not just-
Secure and increase.
This right here very much speaks to existing accesses, but
Can you, where are you seeing that? Because I'm not seeing it in my electronic packet.
page 19, number 4, right there on your
You just look on the screen. It's the bottom paragraph there.
Okay,
how this may come into play is eventually there might be some annexations that happen. And those developments if those developments come in, part of this goal will be to make sure that through those developments, we are creating new accesses to the mountains.
well, do we need to get even more specific that should someone come with an annexation plan with property that borders the I guess public lands or federal lands, that it would be required to provide access? Because this suggests it. Says we want to secure it, but I guess if it's going to be just a goal, then I guess we wouldn't have it there. But we would want to put it in somewhere that it would require access. If it's, in other words, you can't cut off access.
Yeah, I wonder if that should be an ordinance
Mhm.
for relative to annexations.
Thoughts there, Craig?
I think it ought to be, so you can enforce it as a condition for annexation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a
As you
great
go,
idea.
as you go forth in that process. So certainly a general plan is laudatory, it's aspirational, but it really doesn't have the effect of law, even though we're required to do it. But we need, we probably need to look at the annexation as conditions for annexations if they butt up against public lands on the mountainside.
Yeah, so maybe as we work through this, Austin and Craig, we can start developing the language for that ordinance parallel to it, so that when we approve this, that we also have that in front of us so that we can make sure we're complete. Anything else, Jason?
Potential annexation.
Carla, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, but I do like the idea of putting that in our ordinance, requiring that for potential annexations. Excuse me, I'm sick today. That's why I'm zooming in.
We feel that you've adequately distanced yourself. Thank you. Okay, Lon, do you have anything to add to that? All right.
Okay, well, so some other changes that we looked at here, so I'll just go back a page. So in section 2.1.3, we talked about the idea of, well, first of all, we have a new park that's not included here, so we need to add that in. That would be in the ridge at Alpine. There's a family park or kind of a leisure type park there. And so we need to add that to the list, and that would be on the previous page. And then also, so the thought came here as we looked at section 2.1.3. What is an open space park? So we have our open space parks that include Dry Creek Corridor, Hog Hollow Trailhead, Lambert Park, Rodeo Grounds, Three Falls, open space. We had some discussions on this. And Greg Gordon made the suggestion that we add in some language there about leisure activity being a type of thing that's done inside those parks. So
We also had discussion, Hiram, you guys talked about rewording that undisturbed part.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It
is
needs
disturbed.
to be reworded. Shane
How about
talked
natural?
about it. Yeah,
More
there was some
natural.
good suggestions. It just needs to be reworded. And if I, yeah,
I mean, it's
in the minutes, we approved too, Austin Rice said the city may not want to use the word disturbed and undisturbed. He said the council anyway. So we went into that, needs to be reworded.
yeah,
especially if you're including the rodeo grounds, because the rodeo grounds is kind of a
clearly
different animal.
totally different animal.
Yeah. You got that one.
So that needs to be retooled.
Yeah.
One second, Will. Anybody else on council that wanted to add it to that point? Come on up, Will, if you'd like to make a comment. Yeah, I was actually gonna comment on that I don't know if it's possible to capture all of our open spaces, present and future. So maybe we should have some some language in there that refers to anything that may fit this criteria, so that we don't run the risk of leaving anything out.
Well, that was the discussion we had last week too. That was as we're categorizing these things, be a little more clear on that verbiage. Disturbed, undisturbed wasn't quite fitting of some of these, because we need to trail through there. That's disturbed.
Right. Really, any improvement is.
But can you say generally undisturbed other than allowing for trails and trailheads or something like that?
So yeah, Carla, we did talk about these things, and I think when we left it last week, it was, we'll let the attorney and staff start wordsmithing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few words you could use: natural, ungroomed, things like that, that would all kind of point to that same direction, but still allow some degree of development and activity.
Right. I mean, if they just specifically say, because the way I look at these, other than the rodeo grounds, most of it is undisturbed other than trails and trailheads.
Plus, we're putting in a few pavilions, which I guess falls under
parking,
the
restrooms sometimes.
trailheads, restrooms.
Well, that's part of the
Signage.
trailhead though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
No, but I think you're right. I think that needs to be completely reworded though, because we're gonna put benches somewhere along the trails. That's disturbed. And there's so many different ways. So I agree. It's almost like natural vegetation or, non-irrigated spaces. But we don't want to limit ourselves on a trail to.
Yeah, I think the broader the the criteria, the more it leaves us the opportunity to protect it, yet
Yeah.
include it.
Something
Yeah,
like,
but there's some of those words you've mentioned help do that.
like primarily natural or
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on, let's see, designate path as an asphalt or travel road. Okay, so we also had some, along with this undisturbed versus, what is to have it undisturbed or whatever the language you want to use. The idea, the concept also came up in Lambert Park. The idea is we don't want to have any kind of paved anything, right? So whether that be a trail or a road or anything like that, but maybe in the Dry Creek corridor, maybe we do want to have a paved path. I don't know. So is there a way that we can distinguish where these are both still kind of open space areas, natural open space, but maybe in one we have natural paths and in the other one we might have a paved path or something?
Well, we already kind of have that in the central corridor, right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the central corridor that we have. So the plan for that corridor has always been to kind of pave that path.
Mhm.
That was kind of the thought, to give us a different kind of trail in town.
Yeah, it's still fairly natural open space with the
Mhm.
exception of the pavement,
Right.
which I think really helps our park system kind of round it out, because there's, we have our improved parks like Creekside and Burgess, and then we have semi-improved, or whatever you want to call it, like the central corridor. You can access it with a stroller or a wheelchair or whatever else, but you're in more of a natural open space. And then you have Lambert and Three Falls with just dirt pack wherever you go.
Yeah. Yes.
So are you saying, was it suggested that we make language specific to Lambert Park, that there's no pavement, or just in general terms in our natural open spaces?
I personally, and this is my own personal opinion, that I think that we don't do specific
like that.
parks, but like for example, Dry Creek corridor, I'm not for paving that personally. I think a nice, running trail there is, so I'm fine with keeping it that way and not saying this one can have a paved trail and this one can't. And it works for me the way it is right there, but
If we choose to put a paved path in there, it still works.
again, I would vote against it, but I think this allows.
That's fine.
Allows the
I'm asking
discussion.
how you interpret that, yeah.
Will, come on up, make a comment, introduce yourself.
We already started to pay the trail center down here. We just required it of the development here from Main Street down through to the Canyon Crest. And our goal in that was to create about 8 feet of paved with a couple feet shoulder that would allow maybe some horse if they want to do that. So they're not on the pavement and running along that side. So it was a 10-foot wide easement that we've got, and that's what we're trying to do. But I think it brings a whole different thing. I think that's the important thing is our trails up in that area up in there, we don't want to pave them. But down here, so if someone can push their stroller, someone can run with their kids, they can go from Burgess, and eventually our goal would be to get them clear to Creekside. So hooking those two parks together and making that so that they can do it. And someday if there's something out here on the Bangor, it would tie to that. So you tie to Bangor, you tie to Burgess, and then maybe hopefully, my biggest hope would be that we get it someday to Creekside, but that would be easy for families to travel on.
So just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so I understand now. So obviously it makes sense behind the 55 plus subdivision that's there. It's being finished off nice, but as it crosses the river and goes into the Dry Creek, that Dry Creek, is that going to be paved as well?
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't remember ever approving that
Well, that was before you came to council. That happened 6 years ago or so. was it?
Yeah, in fact, we've
That way?
actually taken funds from the county to enhance that and to do it and made some improvement with the intent that that's how that whole thing would eventually be. And the easement would be a 10-foot wide.
In fact, Jason Bond was kind of heading that project up when he was here. with that.
There's
And
a,
Jason, and look at it this way with the pave, we have areas where we can have just natural trails and paths, but this pavement allows accessibility also for
Yep.
people who cannot normally access those kind of trails, that they can still enjoy nature, but be able to enjoy it in their wheelchairs.
Agreed.
It's an accessibility issue.
Mayor,
Yeah.
so I'll give you feedback from a resident down on 800 South. I was down there last week on some issues and I just asking this lady, what do you think the project and everything? And anyway, she thought it was great. And then she went into, hey, how come Alpine doesn't pave any trails? And I said, well, we have some paved trails in Creekside Park and Smooth Canyon and Burgess. She's like, yeah, but I have to go to another city to actually get more of a longer paved trail experience. Like, I guess Highland has some, I'm not aware of them, other than the Murdoch Trail, which is a pretty
Outside of
That's long.
Murdoch, do they have, Car Creek side's pretty wide, long. Healy's,
Yeah.
not the Healy, the Smooth Canyon ones are
They-
pretty long.
They have a path that kind of,
they do have some other networks that kind of go between homes and so on, between
Yeah.
parks.
Yeah, anyway, I just passed that on, just feedback from a resident. It was
I think-
Hunter. I can't think of her first name.
Young family.
Yeah,
think
she
it
likes to
helps
take
us.
her kid in the stroller.
it helps us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's good to diversify.
And part of that trail network is already paved or has been off
Yeah.
of Canyon Crest. The challenge there has been that the tree roots have made it
It's a lot of disturbed
Yeah.
asphalt.
pretty
Mhm.
bumpy, and that's gonna be a challenge, I think, along that, that creek is roots will continue to upset it.
Lon, did you, I think you wanted to say something a moment ago. You got it? Okay. Go ahead, Austin.
Okay, all right, so let's see, we've covered the unpaved and gravel only, so we talked about how we want to kind of keep that in Lambert. And so our open space ordinance, we actually have a section that's preserved specifically for Lambert Park. Just because it's kind of our biggest park and has a lot of details to it, so it actually has its own section with its own goals and policies. And so that's what we have here on the screen. And as you can see in the picture there, we have the poppies up there. So this might be a good section where we talk about our intent for that area and the poppies. I know there's been some discussion that we've had in the past month, or I guess it's been a couple months now, about preserving those and keeping people from trampling them and that kind of thing. So this might be the appropriate place to kind of include something like that. Let's see here. If you can just, going through this, you can see. I think most of us are, when I met with the council members, most of them were in agreement with what's here. The only comment I had here was just from Jason about paths, roads, and trails shall be unpaved. So just making sure that that's in there, as that's been in.
Come on up.
Ed Bush, 1463 Box Elder Drive. I saw that in here. You gotta be a little bit careful because Lambert Park already has paved roads and things. The
Yeah.
Box Elder Drive, the rodeo entrance and the Bowery are all paved, right? So, I don't know if that's a goal to rip them up or not.
Digging them up.
Right, right, but just be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. So maybe designate those that are already paved as exceptions or kind of
Yeah, maybe add some language in there, newer.
without creating that possibility for expansion of those roads.
We're just developed and undeveloped and then.
Okay. All right. And so that kind of gets us through that section there. We also, in this part of our open space, we have included our trails master plan. We have a Lambert Park. So this is the Lambert Park master plan. These were all worked on in separate meetings, and you can see details on here. You know, we have some of the trails outlined. We have key features of the park outlined here on the master plan. Let me zoom in on this. And so, you know, one of the comments I received when I was meeting, and this is before we had started our conversations on a conservation easement, but Jessica did mention that she would like to preserve the boundaries of the park to prevent any future pieces of the park from becoming developed. I think we're kind of approaching that through this conservation easement discussion that we're having right now. So I think we're on that track in a different way, but yeah. Let's see. So another thing that we have, so our trail map is very helpful, but there could be some improvements on it. So we have some trails I know that are maybe one-way trails, and so it might be helpful to have some kind of arrows indicating which way those trails go. So if someone's looking at a map, they know, oh, I can go up that one, I can go down this one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You know,
Particularly
The rodeo.
bike down, yeah. Rodeo
Yeah.
down.
probably those downhill type flow trails would probably be the key ones. Yeah.
Yeah, the rodeo trail, both the upper and the lower sections. That's pretty dangerous if people aren't watching. Please come to the microphone and introduce yourself and tell us your address. That would be great.
My name is Shelley Cox Snar. I live in Alpine up in the Cove area. And I heard that this was a meeting would be opened for discussion for our concerns up in there.
Well, we do have public comment.
Is that at the
Uh,
end? That was my question.
Oh,
back
no,
there.
there's public comment as we get through this work session on just the master plan. This is a discussion specifically devoted to master plan.
Yeah.
And then we'll proceed with the rest of our meeting, in
Okay.
which we will also have
Okay.
time for public comment. But if you have a comment on Lambert Park, feel free to do so while you're up there.
Well, yeah, Lambert Park is part of the issue. I talked to you about a year ago on the phone. You wouldn't know me, remember my name, but I was concerned about the city planning not having a more than one access out of the Cove and Box Elder neighborhoods and I know originally there weren't that many houses there, but now there's so many. We had an issue with fire, you know, a few years ago. Well, we've had several fires.
Yeah.
And even just when the Zolmans started putting in their new neighborhood, the only way out of there with all those homes up above and down to where Zolman's new neighborhood is, was backed up because they were digging up streets, trying to put plumbing and wiring and whatever in. And if there had been an emergency, then we would have had an issue. And I think I talked to you about it, about why is there only one access coming in and out of such a populated area, which is going to only continue to grow. And I thought maybe I'd get a petition going, but then I was ill. But I heard about this and I thought, oh, maybe I should come and say something. But is it really set in stone that we can't have that road, Box Elder Way, paved to Moyle? Because in the original plans, Moyle was left open. And then if you come down Box Elder Way, that would have been one other access out for all those new homes that are above there. I don't know. I know Lambert Park, basically. I don't know complete boundaries. I do know there's that dirt road that comes and goes across from north to south. Dirt road before you get to Moyle. It comes past the Alpine Stake Center Church. And then would also go up to, let's see, what is it, Bald Mountain Drive, looked like at
Yeah,
one
if
time
you
that
continue
could have
along
been an
that road.
access too.
Yeah.
And it just seems like with the floods and the fires that we've had, and you never know when you're gonna have an earthquake or have a street backed up and somebody has an emergency. It really seems to me for the safety that we need at least one more access, especially with the people up above Box Elder. and bottlenecking that one road.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, Shelley, would you mind telling us your address? Did you tell us that when you introduced?
Okay, it's 13413 Grove Drive.
Thank you very much. That's just for the record, the public record.
Okay.
Okay. Austin?
Okay, yeah, so I think, these are all the major comments that we've received. I think we're getting close to I think after all those key points that we've discussed, we'll redraft it. I think we're getting close to kind of final draft, so unless you have additional feedback for us, but I think we've kind of covered it in that last meeting in addition to this meeting.
Hey,
The one thing that I
Austin,
would add,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Carla.
I'm sorry. Did you update the trails map for Lower Forbidden so that the more effort connects to the top part of Forbidden at this point?
our trail map,
Yes, so up in Three Falls,
yeah,
the Lower Forbidden, or what was known as Lower Forbidden, is now closed. So in order to connect to it,
okay.
you need to go off of Bodley Harm to more effort. So I think we should drop that lower part of Forbidden.
Yeah, I don't think that's been updated on our trail master plan, so we need to do that.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Austin, could you show the Lambert map real quick? I'm wondering on that fencing that goes along the south end and west and south sides of Box Elder South. Is the intent there, is this fencing the city would add with the intent to prevent encroachment from backyards, or is it?
That's been in the plans for quite a while. That also was we came to that decision probably 5 or 6 years ago and have done pieces of it. You've seen it up
Okay,
there.
yeah.
It's just been a matter of materials, being able to afford the materials and get the labor to get it done. So we've kind of been piecing it in. And we started with kind of a dotted line, right, Will, that we basically did sections with gaps. And then the idea over the years is to close those gaps to create a defined boundary.
So
One of
great.
the-
I was going to say the main reason for those fencing though was to clarify any confusion on the public's part where the park boundaries actually were. There was a lot of misunderstanding what actually was Lambert Park and what was private property. And so to clarify that to the citizen, we were delineating it with the buck and pole fencing.
Yeah, and to that point, we've been privileged to be able to use the private property trails, but that at some point will be either reduced or eliminated, but kind of depending on what type of subdivision is brought in. But Carla's right. We need definitions so that people don't feel like they're being encroached upon when there's just a development of private property. Austin, I was also thinking that maybe we include some language. We've talked about Lambert Park specifically and retaining its borders, but we should also leave the possibility open for expanding Lambert Park if the opportunity came. There is private land that borders it, and there may be the opportunity for future agreements.
Okay.
Come to the mic, please, Ed.
Ed Bush again. I know it's kind of a hot topic, but on the map, it shows motorized trails.
Yeah.
The blue is the designation for motorized trails. And so I don't know, in the future, I'm not quite sure, what the plan would be in terms of the master plan, but I just wanted to point that out since the park is closed, those trails are closed to motorized traffic now.
Yeah.
Well, very good point.
Right. Are you talking about the ones that are referred to as motorized? Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, that would be it, wouldn't it? I was looking at hard surface.
That's our
I'm
stance on
pretty
that's
astute.
changed significantly since this was drawn.
Yeah, this was a 2017 plan.
I read that for the first time. So I was looking at hard trails before. Yeah, I mean, I've suggested this before, that there are some trails I mean, they appear to be trails, but they really are improv four-wheeler trails from the past, when we've had motorized in the park, that have created what looks like a trail and some roads that should be, in my opinion, abandoned and seeded over so that we could clean the park up a little bit too. And that could help clean up the trail map and really clarify where the designated trails are versus, the incidentals.
Yeah, and it's and again, the rodeo is a little different, right, with the
Yeah.
rodeo entrance and parking.
Yeah, the Bowery might still apply for that though, motorized access, so
Yeah,
looking at this.
Yes, also, some of the other area would need to be put into red as well, so because the service equipment needs to go on
Yeah.
what is designated currently as the motorized trail.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
to get to where it's shown in the red, is,
Has to
it
go
says
across.
service, so
It might
Yeah.
freak
it
some
does
people
need to
out.
be cleaned up.
Shelley, go ahead.
Okay, we're just talking about the rodeo ground. That's another time where it could be unsafe. You have all those rodeo people coming in and out. Seems like every year there's an ambulance that goes up there. If there was a fire, again, it bottlenecks that area. And again, another concern I have on that street coming out of the rodeo grounds is that bridge that goes over. It's narrow, it's precarious in the winter. And then you come around and people actually drive off the road a little bit every time. I have a semicircle driveway on my street on Grove Drive with brick columns, 2 on each side. 3 of them have been hit. And a mailbox 6 times. People come around it too fast. It needs to be widened and maybe a speed bump, but again, you're gonna have a lot of people coming out of there. If there was an emergency, we could pile up in that area too. And it doesn't just have to be an emergency, it's just not, in my opinion, it's not safe to have so many cars coming down on one street.
Thank you. Austin, anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I think, I guess the last thing is, I know that we wanted to have some talks about the poppies, so if you want me to include any of that here, just let me know what your ideas were and we can get that included.
Okay, I think one of the things that we ought to, I don't know if it's included here or in an ordinance, but I think we need to have some language that implies or indicates that Lambert Park is not for commercial use unless otherwise permitted. In other words, if you're going to take wedding shots and you're going to make a profit doing that, you've got to get a permit from the city to do so, so that the city can monitor what kind of damage occurs after your use. So I think maybe wrapping that into some kind of commercial use, because it is for profit, or even if it's not for profit, just, for the general purposes, that's a permitted area. Would anybody agree or disagree with that?
I agree with it. I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive around the poppy area though. As I was walking around, I think we need to do a lot of revegetation on it. There are so many trails that are cut through that poppies will never grow again in those areas. I think maybe what we do, we set up a set path that people can go on. And I think we're going to have to kind of rope it off or something for next little while until we get revegetation going.
Yeah, I think we could really dig deep into this topic. And maybe that part of that discussion, Carla, includes maybe a boardwalk. So it's highly visible, it's designated, and a boardwalk that may go in 2 different directions.
And
then-
definitely signs saying do not pluck the blossoms.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. And it looks like the policy 1.7, describes this well. We just need to go do it now. When I was there this year, I think there were 70 people at the same time, right? And it was just, and there's just, trails everywhere and.
Maybe some elbow grease in there, Will, this fall, and get some things dug up and maybe revegetated.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year, bad year anyway with the drought. It just needed some moisture up there. Mayor, I have a question on that direction though. Craig, legally, how do we keep people from taking pictures on public property? How do
Hire
you,
more cops.
that's, you could,
I mean, it's a very,
You can do it, but it's not practical.
okay.
Let's,
But you
I
could,
mean-
we could legally though,
yeah,
say no commercial photography or.
the state capitol is a good example of that. They don't charge on the outside, they charge on the inside.
Okay, I just.
And so, you know, it's problematic from a practical standpoint, to be honest with you.
But at least we can state it though, and legally
Yeah.
state it and, and post it down on at the parking lot, whatever.
It's
Okay.
also prohibited to litter on a federal wilderness area, and we've got TVs and washing machines up at the shooting area.
Can I ask one question too, Mayor?
Go ahead.
It's relating to Lambert. I just want to get an update of, obviously we voted unanimously to put that pavilion up on top to help with the shooting issue. Then we voted unanimously to put it on pause while we had the Trails Committee give a suggestion. I haven't heard anything on it and just kind of want to know where we are in that process of getting something back from the Trails Committee.
Yes, please, Will.
Yeah, so we found a specialist out of Park City that does the structural stuff, the woods and stuff, and walked it with him for a few hours. I guess that's been about a month ago. Yeah, it has. And he'd looking at it, said, no, this is not the right place to do it. It won't maintain. So he's putting a plan together. He hoped to have it to Jed last week, and I haven't had a chance to ask Jed about it, and he's going to use natural things, stone and other things like that that can maintain themselves, because up there he says with what will happen, they'll just tear it apart. And
Have we had any progress on what we want to do as far as the structure piece of it?
he's going to come in, with the structure, we're doing a sign. We're still doing our sign pavilion up there. That's what we decided that night, that we would relocate one of the signs that we're going to use below and put it up there and sign it. So that is a structure.
So
again.
not a bench structure that we talked about.
Did this one have a bench? What was our final thing? I think we decided that we were going to put a bench on this side of it, so it didn't become a place to shoot from on that side. We're going to make it so, that what we were talking about, Shane, that we were turning the sign differently than we originally thought, so that people would be this way and not on that side, and then be using it again to shoot off of. That was our concern.
So, I mean, so does that fit, to Mayor's point before, layers, if there's a way to cut down on some of the shooting up there, this is one of the layers, having
Yes.
some type of a structure that we could say that this is a structure.
Yeah. And so
Is
that's,
what you put together, does it fit that?
we think it does. We think it as close as anything else we can do, other than a major, what we were trying to do before in that area is, and then off of that, what we do is this enhanced trail that comes with different types of berming. This same guy is the one who built Trailside in Park City, if you've ever ridden it. It's high value because of it. You ought to see there on an evening. That place is just packed because it brings people to it because of the kind of unique structures that he has. But he said the wood structures, he will supplement them with some dirt structure, some natural rock, and maybe even some log type things that go over, so that we're writing that stuff. And that's what would drive people to it.
So I was kind of an assumption that we would, obviously we'd move the pavilion down there. We're gonna do a smaller one, that we were gonna use some of the same footprint that we had set up there
Yes.
to put this bench / sign / whatever structure. Is that still the
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah, it's still going there, and it's still going to be used that same way. We're just trying not to enhance the shooting that
Right.
could happen off the backside of it.
Right. So when do you think we might have something before the city
I
council?
thought, like I say, his goal was to get it back to us last week, because we asked for a full bid proposal with drawings and everything, so I could bring something to you. Yeah, so he is and by the way, meeting with that guy was a wonderful thing. He talked to, and I don't have time tonight, but we could show you all the trail things. I've got to leave, so can I make just 2 quick comments and get out of here?
First, I want to thank you First, I want to thank you for bringing back my pitchfork and my rake, and dropping out of the house.
I was gonna ask you if you got, okay, the first thing is just a quick comment. We received $300 from the Mountain, Lone Peak Mountain Bike Club. It's a in-kind donation. So what happens is that means they did 300 hours of service. And so we get $1 per hour of service to them. And so this is to Alpine City.
That's great.
The next thing is we will get another one just like this from Sky Ridge, who also did. So we had, between those two groups, we had 600 hours of
That's
donated service. So I'm pleased with that. The second one, and I'm out of here, is would you please consider having a meeting 2 weeks from tonight? I'm requesting this from Mr. Layton. He had a project he's on next Tuesday night with planning. That would mean that he couldn't actually even move forward with this thing until September because your meeting in August would. And he's just asking if short, it's the final plat of Whitby Woodlands. And it's just fine. It's just a final deal. He just, and it's a good one. It went from 15 lots down to 5. And so he just asking, it's a connection there right on Hog Hollow, where Hog Hollow comes, Westfield Road comes, and we finish that. And this would allow him to meet with you before waiting clear until then.
Okay,
Because there isn't one then at all in August until that last one.
right.
So it's 2 meetings gone in a row.
Thank you. And that's something I would
If
be
you
happy
please
to
consider.
discuss toward the end of our meeting to
Thank you.
decide.
I
On
may be
that.
back if I get thrown out of America before.
That's highly likely, I would guess.
Okay.
And maybe we should talk about that toward the end of our meeting and see if there's something we can do. Okay. We accomplished everything you wanted to.
I think that's,
Austin?
yeah, that's all we have for tonight. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, let's move forward with the rest of our meeting. Let's talk about the consent calendar. Lon, do you have anything on that?
No, just a few minor changes on the minutes that I made.
Have you made those clear to Bonnie?
Yes,
already?
I have.
Okay. Carla, did you have anything?
I do not.
I
Greg?
submitted a couple of minor corrections as well.
Thank you. Jason, did you have anything on the consent calendar? Then we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the consent calendar as stated with those 2 minor corrections to minutes.
Okay, we have a second by Long Lot. Do we have a motion by Long Lot. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Greg Gordon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion is unanimous. All right, public comment. So in every meeting, we reserve a little bit of time at the front of our meeting, or in this case, in the middle of our meeting, for public comment. If any of you would like to come forward and talk about anything that's not currently on the agenda, and keep your comments to a 3-minute limit, we would appreciate that. And when you do come forward, please state your full name and your address. All right, ready for the timer, Austin?
Ready.
There's our time enforcer right there. We'll go ahead and open up to public comment.
Ed Bush, 1463 Box Elder Drive. Just a couple of question and a comment in here. One is that appreciate the barriers that were put up by in the park to that. I did have a question though, because it's come up with a couple people from my neighborhood that under an evacuation, how do those barriers work with like a passenger car going over them? They could kind of see a fire engine hitting it, but an Audi sports car might have another effect. So I didn't know. They work well.
Yeah, it looks
Okay.
like they work easy.
Okay, great. I know they're spring loaded.
So
And
easy
then-
that we don't even want to announce how.
Exactly.
They're easy.
And then just we had the message that went out in terms of water conservation this week, in terms of and that I know most of Alpine is obviously on pressurized irrigation, but there are some neighborhoods like up at Box Elder and down down Preston, I guess, or something. You're right, that water using culinary water, and so if you, there's always a confusion that people say, well, I don't have to follow that because I'm on culinary water. This is just for the pressurized irrigation system they're referring to that they're running out of water in. So I would just make a suggestion, if we want them, if we want to make sure to get the point across that we want water conservation in general, right? And that to, point out that, irrigation both by pressurized and culinary, would be included.
And we did clarify that.
In ordinance, meeting or two ago.
Yeah, no, I,
But our plan is to send a message out to those people.
yeah, no, I know it's in the updated ordinance, but it would be
No,
good. if
we're gonna
the
send
announce-
out,
Yeah,
we're
just in
gonna
the
send out
announcement, it
a
would be helpful.
Everbridge message
Yeah.
to those specific residents.
Yeah,
So they'll.
Just to clarify.
know.
Yeah.
So.
okay,
Clarification of outdoor water use.
Yeah.
It sure be great if we get 100% compliance with those who are not on culinary water.
great, thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a statement?
Yeah, hi, Greg Link, 13300 Grove. Try to stay out of the weeds, Mayor. I'm glad you guys are in the weeds. This is a slippery bunch of stuff you guys are contending with. I'm gonna try to stay up at the 50,000 foot level. I'm really don't understand the procedure that we're gonna go through as far as the approval or disapproval of the conservancy for Lambert Park, which I'm in favor of. And in the process, maybe because I posted a couple things on Facebook, have received a lot of input. And it's not a slam dunk. I was, aside from COVID and before then, I was out of town a lot, so I didn't really pay attention when we did the development up above Box Elder. You got 50 homes up there, and I know Shelley touched on it. But she's the tip of the iceberg about the concerns as it relates to not having any pavement in Lambert Park. And I know the Moyle people are really, intent on not having it follow through from the original plan. But isn't there a way you can take it out by the stake center and have some kind of pavement? I live on Grove Drive, and my concern, I've asked you guys, Lone Peak, and was told they'd bring over, I don't know if you did a traffic count before you approved that subdivision, or.
Let's just to be clear, it's not a subdivision, it's in the city, it's in the county. And so
But
there were no,
go get in and out of it through the city.
true, but it was also designated as an emergency access only when the subdivision was plotted.
Okay,
And so, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, but
sure.
but at this point, the road is a designated emergency access that must remain open at all times of the year for
Yeah, I'm not
evacuation.
concerned about emergency. I'm concerned.
Right,
concerned
about traffic.
Day-to-day,
Yeah,
kids at the school bus,
yeah,
the bridge Shelley referred to at the top of Grove and Box Elder. That's a hanging liability. Somebody's gonna die there and you guys are gonna have different problems. I don't know how all that sorts out, as whether it's in the county or the city or who's driving through it or whatever, but I walk up there every day and guys coming out of the county and out of Box Elder don't yield. I know there's a yield sign there, and then you've got all the third parties going up to the rodeo grounds and up to the trailhead at the Forest Service. They're completely out of towners. And then you've got all the construction traffic. And if you put a speed thing on there, you're gonna find that the average speed is not 25. It's much closer to 45 and sometimes higher than that. So you really need to, think it through, because if you think the conservation thing's gonna go through, the heat's gonna come around the traffic issues. So, but anyway,
thank you.
did you ever get your feedback on the original intent from the Alpine designation in Lambert Park? Whoever donated the land in, was their original intent on the paperwork you guys were gonna check out last time?
So it wasn't donated, it was purchased by the city.
Okay,
And
and there were
there
no
is,
documents, is that gonna become public?
that'll all become very public, yes, that'll be part of the process.
And some of us will obey that yield sign.
Some of it.
That is the one guy.
Safety purposes.
It's the outlaws from the county that don't do it. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment? And we do have Wendy Fisher in the audience. Wendy, I don't know if you wanted to come forward and clarify anything on the conservation easement. We're going to have some public comment specifically designated for that. So if you want to wait until then, you're welcome to. Okay. Without any further public comment then, oh, sorry. Come on for, yeah, sorry, come on up, Tracy.
Shelley Snar.
Cheryl, I'm sorry, I called you Tracy, I'm sorry about that, I meant Shelley. Starts with a consonant.
Yeah, it's 13413 Grove Drive. Again with Brother Link or my neighbor Link. Greg Link. It is more than just safety. I mean, like during an emergency, it's more than just that. It's just so overloaded, that street, and there are kids on it. There's a bus stop on it, and snow plows, and like I said, my yard's been run into so many times, but it's not just for us. It's not just safety for you or for me, that all those people coming up out from up above in the county, I don't know how they got that passed, that there could be so many up there with only that one access. And I hope there'll be some,
I don't either.
you know, think about that and try to get another access out of there. I don't know how many other cities would only have one access for as many people as use that street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've touched on that topic enough to move on. Okay, Shane, do we have any reports?
No.
Okay. Moving on to action items. So on the calendar, it appears as a public hearing. We noticed it as a public hearing for the conservation easement process. It's really more of a public comment time. And I know that there have already been some comments made, and I think we've got the gist of those comments pretty clearly. So I don't know if we have to restate those. But I would like to open it up to anybody else who has comments regarding the process, the concept, or any statements of support or objection that you might have to it, or any pieces of it. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to open that public hearing now, and it'll remain open as long as we keep time with our meeting. Let's go until about 7:20 if we need to.
Ed Bush here, right. You know, I will just make a kind of public comment that I'm a little bit on the fence on this one. And I obviously, you know, I'm a big supporter of Lambert Park. I walk it almost every day, you know, through the Alpine Nature Center and everything that goes along with that. I'm a little bit worried. You know, I wasn't here for the working meeting. I had a previous to that, but I've gone through there's an audio file on YouTube and listened to the meeting, and I'm a little bit worried of how, if we know enough how we want to treat the park in 20 to 30 years, right at this point. I guess, you know, if we're worried about making changes to the park, there are possibly other ways. I know we know, you know, super majority right now the council requires, you know, any changes, you could make it unanimous. You could put the need for public referendum and etc. without going to the full conservation easement. I'm a little bit hesitant because I've been involved in conservation easements out on the East Coast, and the ones that I've been involved in have been like undeveloped marshland that would just have a boater or something that would be coming through, and they would, you know, that versus kind of a natural park, I guess, or whatever we in there. So I guess, you know, I would like to see, as somebody from the public, that as we go forward with that, and if we were going to go down that conservation easement, that agreement would be reviewed by the public to make sure that we're not missing something and looking out decades in advance in terms of making an agreement of what Lambert Park would be used and not used for.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Ed. And just so you know, that is part of the process that we have begun.
Yeah.
So it'll be a public document and we'll have opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have an opportunity to really dissect that and look at it. It shouldn't be too long before we have a draft of that.
Greg Link, 13300 Grove. Yeah, most of the conversations that I've elicited, people do not understand this. And I guess as we make it public and they get a document to review and all that, but the biggest resistance is a misunderstanding that we're going to decide right now and there's no changes forever. They don't understand the 5-year management change. It's a living document and people don't seem to understand that. So whatever communication you put out, you need to let people understand that it is a living document, that there can be some realistic adjustments to it. Because right now they're just black and white on it. And they just don't understand it.
Thank you for pointing that out. Come on up,
So-
Wendy, if you'd like to.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, Carla, go ahead.
I
Wendy's
just,
on her way up.
okay, I just got an email. Should I read it from a resident or no?
Yeah, let's give Wendy an opportunity since she's already come up. Let's have Wendy make her comments and then
Okay,
let's go back to that, Carla.
There, but I think it's only if you have a computer, but.
Where's the computer plug-in? Sorry.
Up in the top there. That panel up.
Oh,
Different
okay. Well, I
connectors
can
in
do that
there.
too.
Yeah.
Why don't you read the email?
Yeah, go ahead, Carla. I think we're gonna need a minute.
okay, so this is it's her husband's birthday today, and that's why she's not at the meeting, but she sent an email to me and Austin, and I am forwarded it to the rest of you guys. But it says, my name is Shelley Butterfield. I have lived on Grove Drive for 26 years. I've also been walking, riding my horses, and mountain biking in Lambert Park over 30 years. Lambert Park is a jewel to our city. I'm completely in favor of the park being in a conservation easement and no road through the park at the end of Moyle Drive. Currently, the traffic on Grove is increasing and quite terrible. The bigger part of this problem is the speed at which people drive. Residents who live and construction workers who are driving to Box Elder Cove and Lambert Park could slow down to 25 and alleviate 90% of the problem. I've called their police department with no response. Perhaps the city could aid in this effort. Shelley Butterfield. So that's what she has to say.
Okay.
Okay, for the technologically illiterate like myself. How do I show?
He's coming to help.
Wait, I'm sure it's gonna be like a button that magically appears when you get up here, huh? Let's see.
While they're working on that, I have talked to chief about enforcement up there and in other areas, and speeding's a problem throughout the entire city.
It is.
I mean, you could throw a dart at a map of the city and somebody in that area would have complained, so.
Yeah.
But chief could maybe update us. on-
Chief and I had a conversation about this earlier this week about Ridge. Ridge, Grove, High Bench, you name it.
Take your-
They all have problems, yeah.
Even down on 8th South.
Yeah. Anywhere there's not a stop sign every block, there's a problem.
There was I was out exiting on Alpine Highway, Main Street, heading out of town. And I got passed in the passing lane. I look over, it's a little old lady, and I look down, I'm going 47 miles per hour, and she thought I was going so slow, she better just pass in the turning lane. And I thought that kind of exemplified some of the speeds around.
Great.
And can I,
Love it. Great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jason.
and just to add something, sorry, before speed is an issue too, but to the point that some people brought in so far related to traffic. Traffic's also an issue everywhere in the city. But the concern I have a little bit is the traffic up by some of the people that have talked up there in the Cove and Box Elder area. Your traffic is the least in the city. If they continue on down that road, all the way down that traffic, it's more because more people are going to that point and turning around. So down Main Street going, along this road here, their traffic is a lot higher than up there in Box Elder and the Cove area.
Yeah.
So to the same point, traffic is traffic and we don't like it. But to say that somehow there's a huge burden up there based on that, I can walk the traffic patterns. I don't think anyone's going to go this other way when they're going up to the rodeo grounds or when they're going up to the falls or when they're
Coming out of the
it's
cove.
too out of the way. So
Yeah.
it could help an individual's right there from that one little spot up to Box Elder, but it's just pushing it somewhere else. We do need a secondary access for sure for an emergency. But what I'm trying to say is that your traffic in front of your house is less than most traffic in front of Alpine.
It's not the traffic, it's
It's the speed. I agree 100%, Greg. So to that
Yeah.
point,
And the,
if we're talking traffic, that's one thing. But if we're talking speed, I actually think this group that came in here and made a big push, Ramon's wife, Ramon Beck's wife.
Yeah, Julie Beck with a.
Commit to the limit.
Commit to the
Commit to
limit.
limit.
Yeah.
They were stressed. They finally took it on themselves and they were very, I feel
was
like,
effective.
effective.
Yeah.
And, but to the point, they're frustrated with the traffic here, but it's mostly the speed. And maybe the question we ask ourselves is how do we fix that problem?
Yeah.
I don't think that the secondary access road with I think it'll help a few people, but it won't help the city because think about it, if you come, who's going to take that road and then go back around to the rodeo grounds? You're not, you're going to continue up there. What you're going to do there to go from our fire station to anywhere in the Cove, it's faster to go this way. To Box Elder, it's faster to go this way. The only place that's not faster to go is a couple of the outlying areas of the county Lambert Park. So from a safety perspective, I don't see it, but I think it's a speed issue as much as anything else.
Thanks, Jason. Take it away, Wendy.
Okay. I think I'll address just very quickly some of the comments that were made. First and foremost, it's been actually really delightful to talk to a couple of the different council members. I'm not going to look at anybody. There are a couple of people that haven't signed up for an interview on the council yet, and we hope to talk to them. It's my plea while I'm here, because it's been really informative to help us understand more about what some of the future for Lambert Park could be. And I'm the first person to say we don't need to do a conservation easement if it's something that the council decides and the community decides doesn't work. There's no hidden agenda. This is not something that Utah Open Lands necessarily is saying, yes, we absolutely have to do this. We really are the vehicle for permanent preservation of a property that seems to be, according to the surveys that we've seen, very near and dear to everybody's hearts. But there are all sorts of machinations in terms of how you might end up with respect to Lambert Park. And if we go through this exercise and it's determined that the conservation easement is not going to work, then that's okay. Interestingly, yes, the East Coast, there are a lot of conservation easements. They're very different in various different states and also depending on the land trust. I thought it was interesting, I may be wrong, but I think the gentleman who was talking about trails and the person from Park City that he's working with, I think that person is Bob Radke with Creative Trails. I'm not positive, but Bob, I'm pretty sure did do the pump track and the project up in Park City. And we've done a number of trails or a number of conservation easements with the Snyderville Basin Recreation District, protecting the land and also allowing for trails. But I think that the comments are really important to understand that, yes, this is a process and it's a learning process and it's something to understand how best to protect this property. So with that, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at what we're hoping to be able to provide in terms of a public open house. We've been able to schedule it for August 4th. And I have gotten confirmation that the city offices, we can have it here. There's nothing else going on and that will be open. And I apologize. I think we talked about doing it from 5:30 to, I'll have to check on
I
it. Do you
I
remember?
think it actually started at 5, I think it was 5 to 7.
5 to 7,
Yeah.
okay. And what we're gonna do, to give you a sense of that, is we're gonna basically put together some of the resource maps that we have developed, and that includes everything from recreation to some of the current conditions. This map that I'm showing you right here just shows you the visual vulnerability of Lambert Park. I was actually struck today, knowing where Lambert Park is. You actually can see that park from a number of different areas throughout Alpine, but also as you're driving in along the corridor to get to Alpine. And so this is actually something that we have somebody in our office who's very experienced in being able to do these sorts of projections in terms of visual vulnerability. What does that mean? Well, that means that to the extent there's development in this particular area, the size and the magnitude of that development is going to impair the scenic value. So we utilize these sorts of tools and techniques to really understand what we call the conservation values of the property. Recreation is one of them, and that in all of its various forms. And then also you have wildlife habitat, you have some historic values on this property, and you also have some scenic values. And what we'll do in the open house is we'll have the ability for everybody to look at these maps. We are doing yet another survey, this initial cursory survey, which I have some results and I'll share that with you tonight, was just to kind of gauge the public interest. But I think it was you, sir, who was here at the last, is it Greg?
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, who was at the last meeting, and of course, some of his comments tonight are something that we track as well, which is that the first survey, just a little bit of, hey, where are we at? We're doing a more in-depth survey that will include a lot more questions that I think will dive a lot deeper into what it is the community would like to see. And as we talked about before, and Greg brought up, part of that is also going to inform the management plan aspect of the conservation easement that will give us an ability to say, yes, do we refresh that every 5 years? That's what we did up in Bonanza Flat, but we have the baseline of what needs to be protected put into the conservation easement. So all of those things are yet to be determined, and part of that is just this process that we're moving through right now. So with respect to public input, what I really wanted to focus on, since this is the public hearing part of the input, is basically the survey that we have thus far. We've had 358 responses with respect to how frequently do you visit Lambert Park. You can see that there. We will make this available for you all so you can have that. We did many times a day, every day, many times a week. I'll point to the fact that there are very few people that responded out of the 358 people who've never gone to Lambert Park. How do you use this area? Overwhelmingly, I think it's not a shocker to people that biking was a huge, huge value. Walking and running is also a value that people use. And you can see in the kind of, I don't know what color you call that, mustard yellow, the dog walking is something that's obviously there. Again, not necessarily a big shocker on that. And then would you recommend Lambert Park to families and friends? Yes, absolutely, 98%. Would.
Can we please identify those who said no?
That is not how we do these sorts of surveys. In your opinion, what part of Lambert Park is most unique? And here were some of the top responses that we got, both the flora and fauna of the natural habitat in the area that is its own oasis within the surrounding area, provides an amazing, beautiful experience which should be preserved for the enjoyment of generations to come. The city parks are wonderful, and Lambert Park is unique among them as a park left more to nature than others. Wildflower poppies, people love the poppies. I know you guys know that. And a pioneer home made of stone, the amazing bike trails that attract people from all over. And then finally, do you support the perpetual protection of Lambert Park? Again, I'm not going to tell you about the 1.4 people that said no, but 98.6% were very much in favor. And again, this is just the beginning, just to know where we're standing at. Obviously, if there was 98% of the people said, absolutely not, let's not preserve it, there may not be a reason to go through this lengthy exercise and do the interviews with everybody and have the open houses. But we think, again, we can keep moving and proceeding forward. And then from there, we'll just see how it all turns out. But I wanted to share that with you tonight since it was a public hearing. And then also we'll be announcing, and we'd love your help in letting the public know about the August 4th open house, because we really do want to have information. We'll have actually computers there at the time, and people will be able to take the survey while they're at the open house, and it will be online. It's not up yet because we're refining it now.
Wendy, and I'd like to just kind of reinforce something you said at the beginning of your presentation. Utah Open Lands did not solicit us, we solicited them. And I invited Wendy to become part of the process several months ago to get her input and insights on the benefits and the risks and all of the stuff associated with conservation easements. And I felt that it was worth going forward and pressing forward to see if we could create something that would be a win-win. And really, that's the intent, is not to isolate it or cut it off or anything like that. It's just to create a win-win so the city maintains all of the things that we need within the conservation easement, access to our assets, management of those assets, and the ability to have a say in what happens in the future, but also simultaneously protecting it as a permanent recreational resource for everybody here, you know, as close to its current state as possible. So thank you, Wendy, for that presentation, and we look forward to the August 4th date and getting more people educated and really get our heads around this concept. Okay, with that, oh, sure, please come forward, Greg.
Will that survey be public before the August 4th? So will people be informed to that level before we get to the open meeting?
Probably gonna have to hire you, Greg, after we go through this whole process, right? That's great. I would appreciate that question. What we intend to do prior to the August 4th meeting is not only will we make that survey public, but we will also provide, and we'll look at how best to do it with the city. We definitely will have it on our website. We'll provide all of the information that's going to be at the open house, so people will be able to see the maps that we've come up with at this point. They'll be able to look at the different conservation values that are there. And then, you know, they'll be able to see the results that also came from this particular survey. So yes.
Perfect. Is there anyone else? Okay, then we'll bring an end to the to the public hearing for the conservation easement. Thank you all for your feedback. Oh. Well, yes, if it's very quick, please. Thank you.
We need it recorded.
Yeah.
This is Shelley Snar, 13413 Grove Drive. I like Lambert Park too. I walk there and run there and shown people there. Maybe however the small amount was that didn't want Lambert preserved are the ones that are trying to not let other people in. Try to keep it just for us. But anyway, I think the main reason why it's a safety concern, we're one of the few neighborhoods that are bottlenecked, that we may not have the density of some other areas, but we only have one way out. So that makes it a safety concern.
Okay, thank you.
But in an emergency, I will point out, in an emergency, you can always use that secondary access.
Yes.
So if there was an emergency that happened, fire, flood, earthquake, no one's ever going to say you can't just drive down that if the secondary access is.
It's really the first response, is
Yeah.
using that as the access.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've gotten a little bit past the time we set up for this public hearing, so we're going to move on to yet another public hearing. Before we move into that hearing, Austin, could you please just kind of give us a summary of item B?
Okay, yes, so this is pertaining to a property that's located on 539 North Pfeiffer Horn Drive. That's basically the far northwest corner of town. They're up there, there is some city open space. There's a lot adjacent to that open space, and he's proposing to purchase approximately 1,700 square feet of that open space to kind of square up the front of his property. tonight, we're holding a public hearing. The purpose of that is because this property has been deemed a significant property based on the new ordinance that we recently adopted. So as part of that process, we do have to hold a public hearing. That's the method or the ordinance with which we dispose of real property. And so we just want to get feedback. This would apply to any type of property, city-owned property that we would dispose of that was deemed a significant parcel. And so significant property, we've come to define that as anything that's over 0.1 acres or I believe it was, I think it was was it $1,000 in value?
Yeah,
That's
was it?
right.
I was thinking 2,500, but I think it's 1,000.
It was 1,000.
Yeah, it's $1,000 in
acres,
value.
1,000.
So it doesn't take it much to be deemed a significant parcel. In this situation, it appears that parcel would enhance the value significantly of the property owner that is there, that it would add value to his property, giving him increased frontage, and just more square footage and making his property more useful, adding more utility to it. So we've looked at this. Let me just go to the next screen here so we can kind of see in a visual what we're talking about. So on the left is lot 19. That's the private property owner's property. And the area here, let me just turn this on so I can, oops, wrong button. This will work, okay. So this front triangle here is what the individual would like to acquire. Currently, the larger triangle is kind of what the city owns, what is recorded on the county records. So they want to acquire a portion of that larger triangle. That smaller triangle is what they're hoping to acquire. The city has had plans in the past to put a trailhead access in this area. And so there's been some discussion on that in past meetings. Through here and all the way back in here is open space. And so, and this goes up into the hills up here and accesses potential other trails around the city that you can connect into.
Austin, I had a question. That 25 feet to the north, just beyond your line, what is that? That's not city property?
Which part?
I think your
On the north,
straight line
so this
up
area
is-
here?
Yeah,
off
I
to the
guess
right.
that triangle, yeah, or rectangle, yeah.
Yeah, so that, so there used to be a high-powered gas line that went like this. Some time ago, Dominion vacated that and they put a new high-powered gas line that goes like this. And so that's a 25-foot easement that they have there, but it's also technically city-owned property.
Okay, but we wouldn't put a road over it.
We could pave over it.
Okay,
Yeah, and so that's kind of the situation in both of these is you can't build any structures on these easements, but you can pave over them. And so that's something that can be done. And so some of the discussion is to, if we did decide to do a trailhead here, you could put in some parking in this area here. These could be parking stalls all throughout in here. Or you could have, if this triangle, so previously there was a proposal to swap for this back triangle. Let me just clear this up and maybe have parking back here. And it does open up, there is some more open space over in here that kind of opens up that we have to kind of play around with as a city. So in theory, you could have a parking lot back where that circle is and access it through a little driveway that goes like that. So there's a number of ways that you could do a trailhead with parking. The easiest and most affordable way to do it would be to put it right here just off of Pfeiffer Horn.
Yeah, if we did it back behind, like you suggested a minute ago, that'd be very similar to other parking lots like Lambert, the one behind the State Center that we have there.
Yeah,
it works great, but it's more expensive because you got to create the access.
And then you have to worry about tracking out dirt and gravel onto the road, and people complain about that. And so it creates its own series of issues. There is a moisture evaporation box. It's this little thing right here. That has to remain. It's part of the Dominion gas line. And so if we did, anything that was done in that area would have to be built around that. So you could landscape around it, put some bushes around it, or put a curbing and make a little island if it was a parking lot. There's ways that you could work around that. But it is kind of an obstacle, apart from the easements and the gas lines underground. That's an above ground obstacle that you'd be looking at. And the property owner, the reason why he chose this line right here as his kind of cutoff point is because that's right where the moisture evaporation box is. And so he thought we probably wouldn't want to, we could still have all this area over here for parking and or access. And then he could use the other part to enhance his property. So that's kind of what he's proposing. And again, we're holding a public hearing on that tonight to see if the city council wants to dispose of this property. If they choose not to dispose of this property, the process doesn't move forward. If they do choose to dispose of the property, we will have to move through the public hearing process to do that, and as outlined in our ordinance.
Okay, and Austin, is the prospective buyer very aware that the future will likely hold a parking lot right on that property line?
Yeah, he's been so that topic came up in planning commission, and he is aware of
Okay,
the desire for that. And in fact, in his proposal, he said, it's not my goal to inhibit your parking ability. He doesn't want to, he's happy to have that next to him. Doesn't feel like it's a negative. And in fact, he doesn't want to ruin the city's plans in that regards.
okay. So with that, excuse me, with that explanation, we will open a public hearing. Same rules apply. Please keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and we will allot a reasonable amount of time to that comment. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward? Seeing none,
I have a question. Does he have,
come up to the front, please.
does he have road frontage? Which side, Austin, does he have road frontage?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I should have pointed that out in my introduction. So the area on the bottom of your screen there, that's actually that's Pfeifferhorn Drive. So Pfeifferhorn, so let me see if this will let me draw on the screen again. It's not working. Maybe, there we go. So that's Pfeifferhorn Drive. This is kind of like a cul-de-sac curve. The right-hand side of your screen is north, and then this goes down. So the road continues on that way. So this is the far northeast corner of Pfeifferhorn Drive where it kind of turns.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
If I could, I'm on the call. This is the prospective buyer on 539. Sorry, the owner of the lot.
Yes, your name and address, please.
Michael MacArthur, 539 Pfeifferhorn.
Great, thanks, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, as we met, I don't know how long it's been, maybe 6 weeks ago at this point. And there was a discussion around, hey, the city might not want to sell the lot, disrespective of price, but didn't want to sell it, but had maybe be more open to a like for like trade. So I wanted to just make sure it was known that we were open to, if trading that front corner for the back corner, the size that I've marked out there, we would also be open to trading that if that's what they decided. If they wanted to have more space on that back end for putting the trailhead back there, we would be open to the trade as well.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So Austin, so has something changed? Because my understanding was that the trade was not an option. anymore, that it was with the previous owner and not with a new landowner? Sorry, my voice is going.
Yeah, so there was a trade that was approved by city council. This is a couple years ago, to exchange this triangle for this triangle. It was a like for like swap. I believe it was approximately 5,900 square feet each. However, that net was never actually recorded. So the
Right.
previous landowner never recorded that. And as a result, the property line stays the way it is. So he has this funky shaped lot with the width in the back. As the new applicant has come forward, he's expressed a desire to just acquire this piece, and he wants to keep this back triangle. In the initial conversations with the landowner, it never came up that he wanted to get rid of that back
Okay.
triangle. So that's the way we've approached it up until now. But it sounds like he might be a little more open to a possible trade as he stated tonight.
So I have a couple of thoughts. For the original purchase.
Carla,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's bring an end to the public hearing and
Oh,
then
okay.
can open it up to council.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just going to give anybody one last chance if they have any input. Seeing none, we will bring an end to the public hearing. And now we can open it up to council. Carla, go right ahead.
So a couple of things as far as just a, out and right property purchase. I feel that the price was grossly undervalued. When I talked to local realtors, they said that an average acre lot in Alpine is anywhere from $650,000 to $800,000. So as far as the price, if that were the case, but if the owner is amenable to a swap, I do think that back corner would actually be better for a parking lot because it's actually off the street and a little bit further back, which I think is visually more appealing probably to the neighbors. So my vote would be for the original swap.
Are there any negatives to a swap, Austin and Shane? Does it tie our hands in any ways that we're not thinking about?
Other than we don't have a design for the parking lot at this point.
Oh, what about the slope back there? I know when I was talking to Austin originally, when we were looking at the original purchase plan to do a parking lot in the remaining, what is that? So it is, in that quadrant, there would have to be a retaining wall, which I did not like. It was flatter on the triangle that the Mr. MacArthur wants to purchase. What is the slope of the back corner piece?
I've been out there and there's more than you would think back there. However, it would be, if we can pull up a aerial of that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Because I know when I've
Parcel,
ridden up
county
there,
parcel.
it's a pretty steep incline, right? To get onto Hog.
Right, as you get out of that triangular area, but
No, even to get into it, because from the street, it's a steep uphill climb. It's only like about what, 6-7 feet, but
Austin,
Yeah,
I'm
there's a
gonna
real
have to
steep
have
little
you-
section right there.
yeah.
I think, so there's a private lot right there, I think, where it's mostly
Yeah.
the steep area on the circle is a private lot. And then, but
You
once
need to
you
go-
go back behind, like
Yeah.
kind of behind Highland there, I would say about half of that area is pretty steep, but half of it's relatively flat.
But
Back behind.
where you see up in that corner of that lot, where you see that debris or whatever that is up there, that's a pretty steep section. You drop off,
Yeah.
if you're coming down
Yeah, that's
from Hog
Can
Hollow.
you, Austin, can you do the county parcel so we see where our parcel is?
And do you have a contour?
Well, let's first hit the parcel and I'll tell you what I see when I have driven there and walked the back.
I've come in from the back, from north down into that area, and that's always a little drop that you take on your bike.
Well, even just hiking up it, there's always
Yeah.
that little incline.
Mhm.
Okay, so our only way to get in there is that narrow strip that goes back in. So Austin, you're gonna still have to go pull it down
Gotta go north.
There you go. The area that I visualize as more of the parking would be actually in here. Here is fairly steep, right in here. That you're talking, but the road in would go more like that and be parking in there, because that's fairly flat in there. It is steep over here.
And further west, it's steep in that.
So
Yeah.
what is the slope like? What are the contour lines for the back triangle though, if we did do a swap? I only remember the very front entering it, and honestly, I can't remember what
So
the
I
slope
think
looks like.
it's fairly flat on the city area there in the front.
It's back here. No, not in the front, in the back, if we were to do a swap.
That's what I mean.
It
I
is
think it's
flat.
fairly
It
flat
looks,
back
Yeah,
it
there.
it
looks
is
fairly
flat back
flat
there.
because you can
Front to back.
see this area here.
It is flat.
Yeah. It seems like it goes uphill right
It does.
there.
That's fairly significant, right?
And then once you get on top,
Correct.
it flattens out.
But that steep spot isn't the city
Correct,
property.
but that steep is sort of like this direction, it's steep. This area in here is pretty flat.
Yeah.
I think, aren't there like 2 lots there, actually?
No.
I think there. But I think a key point is we don't have trail easements going north from here. I think, we have, the city has a few acres, right, of trails. We have a few hundred feet, but otherwise it's hitting up into these Draper and private lots. And so, and that's probably why we don't have a trailhead design, but possibly is all we have is that low, that corridor going south. So, until we get those easements, the long-term viability of those trails, I think, is uncertain.
Well, I remember as we discussed this before, the most logical part of this swap was to go, go like that and switch that to here. And then be able to do some parking back here in the back and then more parking over in here. Parking in here, parking there, and just to access that. That's what I remember before, and the reason it seemed like a reasonable thing to do, swapping it. I had a question though, Mayor, can
Go ahead.
I, sort of in the legal aspect of things here, is does a land swap then, Craig, require the same public hearings and process?
Yes, because it is a significant parcels.
Yeah, so even though there's a transfer of equal value, doesn't matter.
No,
Okay,
because it still falls in that range of significant.
okay,
You're still disposing of a piece of real
of piece,
property.
even though we're
Acquiring one, too.
acquiring one.
Yeah.
Okay,
But a land swap, in my opinion, creates a better scenario where we're getting something for something. And because the money is disposable, right? I mean, the money can go away. And it could be said that we've reduced our asset, our long-term asset for a short-term gain. Whereas with a swap, we maintain that physical asset.
In the near term, it seems like, because right now people just go park on the road there.
Mhm.
So in the near term, people may just prefer to park there. And I don't know, maybe we don't invest in a parking lot in there because we don't have easements. We don't have trails that are, not on 6 Blue Bison land. So maybe that's, but we may, even with the swap, we might have enough for several, cars there. And that, I think that's kind of the question is what's our, short-term and long-term plan for the parking?
And to go along a little bit with what Greg's saying, we lost it. I think we plan for the trail to go through. That's what we do as we forward look and whatnot, but you're right, there are some hurdles there. But we have a number of places in the city where we pull right off the road, like a 3 or a 4 stall. It doesn't cost the city as much versus trying to build a road all the way back, cut into the work, and then do a parking lot back there. It almost seems like if the best solution for us right now, based on what we have out there, is to not do the land swap or look at it, but have the, 4 parking stalls right there so that people can come off parking off the street. There is a spot. And we've done that in that city and a bunch of other areas. It just, as opposed to thinking that we're gonna have to do this big parking lot back there, which may never get done.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple off of North Main Street. We've got one off of the east end of Third North.
I mean, it's
Those quick little pullouts.
300 North, we have like, I think, 3 of 4 spots there. They're
Yeah.
just like this, where it just pulls off into.
Well, I mean, if this trail is, I mean, I've been up there quite a bit lately, and there's anywhere from I've seen anywhere from 3 to 12 cars parked up there. Granted, who knows what the future of the trails will be, but I know a lot of people access the Hog and even the new Longview trails from up in that area. So maybe just thinking a couple of slots is not forward thinking enough. But that area I had Austin send me, I guess Jed did a kind of a quick rendering. There could be 8 spots right there off the road in that corner lot.
Do you think, Carla, that the swap actually benefits the city at all? Meaning, if we swap it, we're swapping it for that back corner, of which the road's gonna pass right by it, according to what I heard, and put the parking up above it on that big acre or half-acre spot above it.
I don't think we need to go back there for the parking. I don't, I think that from what I saw from sorry, my voice is going and it hurts to talk. But from what I saw from the renderings that Jed did on the front corner, I think he was thinking anywhere from 8 and then plus that diagonal piece. You could probably do maybe 12, 13 spots. I don't know if you'll need much more than that. I don't think we need to go into that acre. Maybe we could use that acre for something else, whether it's who knows what. But I mean, I do like the idea though, that the parking is off the street a little bit, that it's not just right on the street. Does that make sense? Aesthetically, I think it would look better if the parking were offsite and further back.
I guess if we chose not to do a land swap, but we did sell the parcel, we could still have parking right off the street as a short-term plan and then phase it back in if we decide later on that the trails justified it.
You can't have parking right off the street if we sold that parcel, because the parcel that he wants is the flat part. If we're going to put parking in, we'll have a 4.5-foot retaining wall according to Jed's sketches.
On the,
Okay.
along Pfeiffer Horn? Is that what
Yes.
Okay.
I can pull that drawing up that Jed.
Mayor, we still
Yeah,
have
go
to
ahead,
deal
Mark.
with the vent. that's
Right,
in
but
the
that's
middle.
with the vent in mind though.
I think we can leave the vent alone because it's right on,
Yeah.
it would be part of the property line, I guess,
Well, if you sold it,
if we did sell it.
if
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
trying
so
to
if you
use
look
it,
at that drawing, there's a 4.5-foot retaining wall on the north end. And I don't think that would be ideal. That's why I was
So we can
asking about the
Carla.
slope.
the slope is up there on the left side of your screen now, if you wanted to look at that in that area.
Yeah, so
It's
those are 2-foot contours.
And I cannot see it.
Just one thing on parking, if we were to follow our own parking ordinance that we have for commercial, and we violate it here at City Hall, but it's been this way for probably before that ordinance. We don't allow backing on the street,
Yeah.
for parking. So what we have here, we don't allow.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to look at
Okay.
it.
Good to know.
Look at our own ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just like the little parking lot, probably one,
300 North up there that has.
yes,
Yeah.
that one does back on the street.
Yeah, so that's not compliant.
I mean, that ordinance, the parking ordinance is really for commercial,
Yeah,
but that's how it reads.
yeah.
So it does, it's not breaking the ordinance to on 300 north to back into the street.
Unless you put
Nor
a
would this
lemonade
break the
stand.
ordinance.
It's,
It's just not following our commercial ordinance
Right.
based on buildings.
yeah, and it's really a safety thing. And, you know, angled parking is probably in my mind safer in a situation like that. If you're backing into the street than the 90 degree. Is really more accessible from one
Well-
direction than the other though, when you do that, so.
Yeah, if you think, I mean, we'd have to cut out, right, whatever, 40 feet of sidewalk, right, and make it all a ramp. And so
Yeah.
it's awkward in that regard.
So Shane, in your opinion, can we have like a road-based road or whatnot go back to the back corner for a future parking or have a parking area for our residents? Or is that, I can't see the screen that I'm looking at. I can't make out the contour lines. Is that feasible?
So you could do it if you can't see the contour lines, Carla, this would be tough for you to realize, but the parcel, that square back to the back is quite a bit steeper than the property we're dealing with on the front end. I could give you an idea of the slope.
It seems like the most ideal place for parking that would be the flat piece or that triangle that Mr. MacArthur currently is inquiring about, correct? Isn't that the flatter piece? And then what we're left with has more of a slope and that's why it needs a retaining wall, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you can see, maybe this will work for me. Between those green lines, that's 10 foot of elevation and it's
Oh,
about 30
wow.
feet.
Yeah.
So that's a 33% slope.
Okay, now what about the back triangle though? If we swap the back triangle for the front triangle, can we do a parking area in the back triangle without doing a retaining wall?
Potentially, I think we'd want to lay that out a little bit like Jed did in this other part of that property and see what would work and what wouldn't.
Does that looks like about, what, a 7 or 8% grade right there?
In between.
Oh, green. I'm going nuts.
If I went down to there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For,
What's this?
yeah, that's like 7.5 roughly.
Which is, I mean, that's manageable. I mean,
Ideally
even
on
if-
parking lots, you try to keep them under 5% in any one direction.
But you could work that a little bit and get there.
Yeah, a little bit of cut, a little bit of fill.
Yeah.
Looks like it's almost an irrigation ditch.
What are the green lines?
We're just talking, where are the green lines?
I can change that color. The green lines are 10-foot contours.
Okay,
The brown lines are 2 foot.
Oh, okay. Every green line is 10 feet of elevation gain.
Yeah, and when you go up there, the whole hill is sloping, right? So so in a sense, it feels kind of flat up there, even though the whole mountain slopes down.
much better. Mayor, may I say something?
Please.
I remind you that the decision tonight is whether or not to dispose of the parcel that has been deemed significant, not to decide whether or not you need to swap or build an auxiliary parking lot at one or two locations. But the decision tonight is, should we declare this property surplus and potentially put it up for transfer either by purchase or swap?
So you're saying, Craig, that's really the only motion that has to be made, whether or not we continue the conversation based on whether we're willing or not to part ways.
That's the decision tonight.
And
but-
so at a later date, we could decide whether it's a swap or a purchase.
Yes,
Is that what you're
sir.
saying? Okay,
That is correct.
all right. Well, that simplifies it. So I guess.
And tonight's decision has nothing to do with the price, is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct. So we could make a motion to the affirmative tonight. And then in the weeks ahead, we could determine whether it's a trade or a sale and what the amount of the sale would be. The
That's
details
correct.
can be pounded out later.
But to clarify, Craig, then if we vote to dispose of that property, we're required at that point to make a decision one way or another to dispose of it in upcoming meetings, or can we go back and say we've decided not to sell or trade that property?
You can always reverse your decision.
And it could also end up in a situation where the price that we feel it's worth is
Right.
not what the buyer is willing to pay. And so then the whole thing is scrapped.
Yeah, then just flip the decision and go back to square one.
So with that, if someone has a motion you'd like to make based on that simplified decision.
I mean, and it seems like though, if we just, move to approve disposal of property, right? I mean, that seems a little committal there. I mean, I guess it's not a final deal, but couldn't we just table it and then work on a design? Supposing a swap or something, and then.
You can table
Because
anything you want.
we don't have enough information to make
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
motion. Is that what you're saying, Greg?
Yeah, I suppose, right.
So it sounds like you'd rather have the end in mind before you make a motion to move in that direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether to approve or deny at this point.
I'm with Greg on this one.
Okay, so yeah, we can table, you can motion to table whatever you'd
Okay.
like.
I'll just do that. I move to table.
Can I ask before you do that?
Right.
Okay, is it all right if we hear something from Breezy on that?
Yeah, so if you're ready to make a motion, let's go ahead and have the motion. And then we can have it seconded, and then we can have discussion on the motion, and I'll invite Breezy to come up.
Yeah, so I move to table the decision of whether to dispose of real property located at 539 North Pfeifferhorn Drive as proposed, pending further design considerations of parking, land swap options by city staff.
Okay, so we have a motion by Greg Gordon. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. I'm not sure what Star Wars character I should call Carla right now, but we have a second by Carla Merrill. Motion made by Greg Gordon. So having made that motion, we do have a second. Now we'll open it up for discussion. So Breezy, if you'd like to come up and comment.
Hi, Breezy with the Breezy Ants with the Trail Committee. Trail Committee, we did talk about this today. The talk was if there is a swap, if you feel like it's a benefit, we're not necessarily opposed to it. We don't think that there needs to be any sale or any sale to the property. I don't think we have to sell it at all. And to answer your question about there's no easement right now, but we have been working with Draper City and the Corner Canyon Foundation. And we're hoping that the Draper will have some trails that will connect into Alpine. We're having a lot more people from Draper coming into town on their bikes. And if we take the frontage that we've got on that easement and we shrink it, we start having parking. I'm worried if we have parking along the road, and it just doesn't leave enough space to have the access to the trails and a visible access to the trails. I don't think it really benefits us enough to really sell it at all. The land swap, I think that's something that definitely we could look at if we have a land swap on the front corner for the frontage to the back, as long as we can have a trail that's visible from the road and accessible. So if somebody's coming from anybody from the west part of town, we don't want to cut off their potential access to the hillsides. And And I don't think this will become a derelict piece of property. I think that the city of Draper and the Corner Canyon Foundation is gonna get something worked out with the Blue Bison and not cutting off the trail system. So we're gonna work pretty hard to try to keep that open and that connection.
So Breezy, you feel like the sale doesn't do us any good, but the swap may do us some good.
I don't think the sale would be a bad idea.
You think it would be?
I think it'd be a bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, what do we gain if we sell it?
Right.
And a few $1,000 is not worth it.
Better to retain.
Yeah,
Property up
that
there.
was the discussion, but we would like to maybe look and we can go up there and have the potential of maybe having some parking spots on that back corner if there is a swap. We don't want to, and if we have access, enough space for people to back in, back out, have two-way traffic.
Yeah.
So we would like to go up there and maybe walk up there with Jed and anybody else and see if
Yeah.
it'll,
I was just gonna
Makes sense.
propose
Yeah.
a field trip for the council to go up and
yeah.
put feet on the.
I
ground up there.
definitely would like, we can
Yeah.
get the committee up there to look at it, because I think that this is a big enough decision to have a few of us up there to look at it.
Well, and tying into Draper Trails right there is great
Mhm.
because they really have a really well-developed trail system. It continues to grow. And to meet them up in that corner, I think would be fantastic. Because right now I ride those trails a lot. I'm driving over to Highland to connect to them because the Hog Hollow area, this area isn't as conducive to good riding as
Yeah.
it is over there.
Yeah, and we've been trying to work with them of getting some more connection
Mhm.
of a Bonneville Shoreline Trail into the Three Falls trails. And so the dialogue is there, and I am gonna be going and meeting and talking to the city council or city planning about saying, don't cut off the access. I mean, since John Moyle, we've had access from this exact spot. And we don't want to cut that off by any means. And if they're gonna allow a development to work with the developer of getting the trail through, so we still have that connection that we've had for decades.
150 years.
Yeah. At least that's what we think. I'd have to ask John Moyle myself. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Breezy. Appreciate it.
So I don't want to drag this petitioner along. I am not for trading out the front of that, which I think would be a good trailhead, especially when we could do stuff there. And we also have the space in back. I don't see how a swap benefits us more than keeping the front as a city.
Well, we have a motion to table. Is there any further discussion before we take that vote?
Yeah, a
Go
little
ahead,
bit.
Molly.
I think the field trip would be good. I've stepped foot on that many a time, and that I think it could benefit both of us by straightening that up a little. If we saw what was there and looked at it a little deeper. I'm not for selling it though, for sure.
No.
It would have to be a swap.
Okay. Carla, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think I'm pretty along with what Lon just said.
Okay. So if there's no further input, let's take a vote on the motion to table and discuss in a future meeting. All in favor of that motion? say
Aye.
aye.
I,
Okay, that sounds unanimous. Any opposed? Just to check. Okay, we have a unanimous vote to table for a future date. Let's also work on getting a date that works for everybody to run up there, preferably in early morning or an evening to do it while it's cool. So we have time to get up there and mill around a little bit without running to our cars.
do a group bike ride.
I'm all for it. We start at 5:30 a.m.
Or 6 of you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next topic. The Cherry Point Subdivision Plat A. Austin, do you want to introduce this, Long Grove Drive?
Yes, okay, so Cherry Point Plat A, this is returning from the last meeting. We needed to hammer out some details with the developer of this parcel. We've had an agreement that's been drafted up. So as a reminder, this is the final plat for phase 1 of the Cherry Point subdivision, or plat A of the subdivision. It's a 1-lot plat, which you see here on the screen. Phase 2 or plat B would be, there's a separate 5 acres, which you see on your screen here on the left. That would be developed at a later date and would likely be multiple lots. And so let me just pull up the agreement that we've kind of drafted here. So the agreement outlines the terms of this deal. So the city right now isn't interested in putting in improvements on Grove Drive. That's likely to come at a future date when we're finishing the other parts of Grove Drive. And so because of that, part of the agreement would be that they would put some money in give us money now that would go and be in escrow that we could use to finish those improvements at the time that we finish the rest of Grove Drive. There are some key exhibits that outline some of these details. So this is our Exhibit A, which outlines the bond and escrow requirements, and it provides a dollar figure for those. These are estimates that we put together.
Why didn't we have that in our packet?
These were all finalized this morning, and
Okay.
so they didn't make it in the packet on Friday.
They emailed it.
We did email it out earlier today.
a few hours ago.
Yeah.
This latest update, like.
3 pages from the back. Don't we have something in our ordinance that we have to have it a certain amount of time before our meeting?
The agenda cannot be altered 24 hours prior to the meeting. However, content that's part of the meeting can be submitted right up to the meeting. But the agenda must remain the same.
Austin, when I read through this, there's language that indicates that if the city chooses to move forward with the improvements prior to phase 2 of the project, that vacates any obligation for the landowner to contribute financially to that. Is that correct? Did I read that right?
That would be correct with regards to phase 2. We would front the cost of those improvements on phase 2.
And phase 2 would never have to contribute to that, or they still have to contribute a percentage once they develop?
The way we wrote, and we're instructed to write the agreement, that if we choose to go forward, that would eliminate any obligation on lots 2 and 3.
Permanently, okay.
Yes. That's at the city's choice.
Is that normal? Why would we do that?
That's what I wondered.
Just an example of where we have done this, the intersection of Westfield Road and 200 North and 400 West. So going up 400 West from there, when we rebuilt Westfield Road and part of 200 North, we wanted to continue curb and gutter and those improvements up 400 West. There was actually an approved subdivision there. It was a phase subdivision. They didn't have intentions of developing that phase. In fact, it's the one that Will mentioned earlier that he wants you to consider in 2 weeks. So this is 10, 15 years ago, probably. Anyway, we wanted to move forward with that. So we entered an agreement with the property owner. He would give us the right of way then. We would construct the improvements. He would not have to pay the city back. So it's only if the city desires to
Faster.
improve that street faster.
So, but to me, it seems a little counterintuitive, because if I'm a developer and I own land like that, then I make that agreement out every day, because all I have to do is sit back and wait for people to demand improvements there long enough that you do it, and then I develop.
Yeah.
It just feels like it puts the city in a disadvantageous position.
But then if you're the city, we don't control when a property develops, and we could sit back and do the same thing. An example would be the extension of Ranch Drive to Alpine Highway. In my mind, that street connection would be huge, be very beneficial in many ways. We haven't acted on it. We've been waiting it out for development to to make that connection.
I mean, one of the key aspects, I think, is securing that right of way today,
Right.
Right.
you know, and so that's the key
But the
part of
way I
that.
read it,
whereas-
we don't secure that right of way until 30 to either within 30 days of receipt of written notice from the city that it intends to initiate improvements on Grove Drive, which or completion of phase 2 subdivision. So we don't get it at all right now, because if they wait for a long time, we still don't get it, even if we choose not to make the improvement. We don't get the deed until they choose to make that.
But if we
improvement.
choose,
Or
Could
we
have
choose.
the-
As soon as we
or-
initiate that, we
or
can trigger it.
choose.
if we
Couldn't
chose
we
next month,
simply-
we would get it.
Couldn't we get the deed right now and still have the verbiage of the city completing the improvement at our choice, at our time, if they choose not to?
We certainly can go back and negotiate it. That's not the direction that was given to us as I and Hiram drafted the agreement this last week.
And there's history with that,
Yeah.
there's negotiations to try to acquire this right of way as part of the rigid Alpine development. And that those negotiations failed. The council wasn't willing to condemn it. And so ultimately the developer came back and said, hey, we're at a stalemate. The council at that time renegotiated the annexation agreement and took that requirement off of the developer.
This is Southbound.
So I guess, the way it's written today, Lon, to address your point, is we don't get the right of way until certain things happen, but it is written in a way that the right of way is imminent, right? I mean,
So
whoever
it
makes the
is
move
imminent.
first.
I mean, no matter what, we will get that.
whoever makes the
That's
first
the way the
move.
contract's written.
Okay,
Yeah.
except for one concern I had in number 8, as far as recordation, is where's the clause that if it changes ownership in between this and that time,
It's at the end, I believe.
the end of the contract?
It's
Runs with the land. I believe it's on the last page before the signature.
Successors or
Right.
something,
very
18.
successors.
Okay. Okay, all right. So again, on item 8, recordation. Is that successors enforcement agreement then on the recording when that is recorded? So that any future person who is looking at buying it, it's on record that they will have to do that.
All 12 pages of this would be recorded on the property, and any
Okay.
prospective purchaser would be bound by it.
And I keep going back to this thought that if the city decides it wants to move forward first, then the owner is relieved of all financial obligation. To me, it seems a lot more fair that either A, and Craig, you've seen a lot of these agreements, so speak up. That either A, we have a timeline associated with that if it is not developed within 5 years, 10 years, whatever that time looks like, then we will still develop and the landowner would have some financial obligation. Or if the city chose to move forward and develop, that the owner would have financial obligation when he subdivides, because the benefit is always there. To me, it seems fair that, the investment of the landowner is expected in those improvements. Doesn't have to happen when we decide, but if he decides to subdivide, even if we have already moved forward with those improvements, that he or she would have some financial obligation. Is that out of the ordinary?
Okay, I'm now in my nefarious evil mode.
Yeah.
Shane, let me ask you a question. If we develop the road, do we have to put curb and gutter in it and sidewalk in?
Oh, I mean, we're in the driver's seat. as
That's
far as
why-
what we
okay,
want
you
to
see
do.
where I'm going?
If we decided we want to do an overlay on the road, we could do an overlay. I mean,
That-
we could do that today. If we
Yeah.
went to expand the width of the road and we don't have the right of way,
Right.
then we have to probably purchase the right of way.
Correct.
And
Right.
let's say we decide in 10 years that we need to expand this road. Greg Link comes in, says, hey, there's an issue here. It's right below his house. We need to expand the road. City council agrees. If we don't have the right of way, we've got to acquire it.
Mhm.
With the situation we have with this agreement as proposed, we'd give them 30 days notice, and there wouldn't be a situation I can think of where, you know, we would need something any quicker than 30 days.
Yeah.
We would be able to acquire that. And maybe it's another 20 years down the road before the property owner wanted to develop that property. So, you know, on all the improvements we've done downtown, Pioneer, 800 South, you know, in some cities they do special improvement districts and things like that. We haven't done that. We funded them as really a benefit to the community.
So we've never had a situation where we went ahead with developing a road, curb and gutter, whatever, along a property line that was not developed, and had that landowner not participate in those costs until they developed.
Not that I can think of in the last 26 years.
Okay. I'm not sure which situation I'm thinking of. Maybe it wasn't in this city, but
Yeah, there's
I've seen
cities
that
that do
happen.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some old agreements on water lines and different things, and the city pre-sold sewer and water connections, and we're still dealing with these, and it's a pain. People change over time, and who knows what the intent was, and you think you have the greatest agreement in the world, and then 20 years later, it's like, what were they thinking? Anyway, we thought this was something that would work on their side and work on our side, give us the option if we ever want to without purchasing. So.
is there a motion? Ron?
And as far as, if I can say one more thing, sorry. I mean, it's a whole nother discussion of what do we see Road Drive from Alpine Boulevard to, let's say, Box Elder, or to the intersection with Box Elder Drive in the future. Do we envision? That's a whole nother discussion. Over time.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion then. I'm satisfied with what I've heard now. I move to approve the Cherry Point subdivision plat A, final plat with the following conditions: that the developer agree to the terms of the development agreement as proposed by the city. The developer provide funds for the improvements of curb and gutter and sidewalk along the frontage of lot 1 prior to recording the plat.
Okay, we have a motion by Lon Lot. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Jason Thielen. Any further discussion or questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Moving on. Setback exception. Austin?
All right, so this is another item returning from our last meeting agenda. This is a setback exception in the Brookside Meadows subdivision. It's for a home that fronts open space on 2 sides, so on the west and the north side. The exception that they're seeking is on the north side of the property. They're requesting a 7-foot setback on that side of the property. wouldn't increase because it fronts open space. It's not directly encroaching on a neighbor's property per se, or neighboring dwelling unit on neighboring property. Some of the reasoning for this is they feel like it can help with their driveway access. It creates a better placement for the home. A lot of these lots, just to kind of back up in this Brookside Meadow subdivision, are kind of odd shaped, and we have had several architects approach the city with difficulty trying to design a home on some of these lots. And so the city has had several requests, or at least been approached about possible requests for some exceptions on some of these lots, given the envelopes that they have to deal with. Whether that be they're on a corner and they have increased setbacks, or due to the slope of the lot and just different features of the lot that create these obstacles.
So Austin, should we expect more of these from this development?
I would
Homes-
expect, so looking at this map here, so the city's already granted some kind of an exception on lot 10. Lot 6, they almost did request an exception, but they ended up finding a design that worked on the lot. But we were approached about it. Lot 7, right now, I've received several phone calls from the person who's designing a home on that lot, and they're thinking about asking for an exception. And tonight we're talking about lot 9. So, I don't know what and also I think I've had some discussions. I've been approached by the people that own lot 1. So for whatever reason, these envelopes that were designed on this subdivision have been difficult for several different architects. It's not like it's just one developer or architect that's approaching the city. These are multiple different groups that have approached, and they're all kind of facing the same challenge, I guess. I mean, one of the problems is people want to build a certain house of a certain size in Alpine because the land is, a certain dollar amount. And so they feel like to get the most out of that investment, they need to build a house that's a certain size. And so it can be challenging to put that on some of these lots. These lots are smaller for this zone because it is a PRD, and a lot of the land was dedicated as open space. So as kind of a trade-off to preserve the hillsides, they were granted some smaller lots. One of the things that we allow in PRDs for that purpose is we do allow exceptions to setbacks. If this was a normal subdivision, it wasn't a PRD, we don't even have the ability to ask for an exception. So it's a very unique circumstance based on the fact that this is a PRD and they dedicated open space to preserve hillsides. So last time in the meeting, it was tabled because there were some questions on, retention. How are they going to retain that north part of the lot? If we allow them to get closer to the property line, how are they going to do that? And we have the developer here tonight, and so he can come up and help answer some questions. But he sent me this image that kind of shows another project that they're working on. This is in Traverse Mountain, I believe. And as you can see here in this picture, it's a home. I think it shows 2 stories that are being built into the hillside. The home essentially acts as the retention. So they can actually, based on the way that these homes are built, it's a concrete block material. They can build them right into the hillside, and the home essentially acts as the retaining wall. So that's the plan for this lot. There wouldn't be any retaining walls. It would just be the home being built into the hillside is what I understand from what they've explained to me.
That's right, Austin. Boy, that seems like it would create all sorts of potential problems with runoff and
It
things like
could
that.
if it was traditional construction. So, good evening, Mayor, council members, city leadership. Yeah, I'm Jeff, and this is my business partner, Josh. We have a company, we do blocks, it's called ICF, insulated concrete forms. If it was traditional concrete, you could have some hydrostatic water issues against the house. But this design, when we push it up in there, we still get the sloping away from the house. So it meets those building requirements. And then we also add French drains just in case. And that's not standard here, but we do it anyways, just to make sure there's no issues. So the Dan and Darcy Circuit Home, which is on lot 9.
Mhm.
We'll be doing the same design concept because they have a sloping hill this direction and this direction to the road. And as Austin mentioned, with the setback from the road, you have to push the house into the hill. And they're gonna try to push it up on the hills as much as they can. But that basement section, the way they've got the design of the home, the hill will actually be built into the side of the house.
How high up?
It'll start from the front of the house because the basement level from the street is exposed. I don't know if you have that drawing, Austin, of the,
Let's
Of the
see what
elevation.
drawings I had, which,
well, we can kind of explain to it from that one. But the upper corner is the north side, I think, or west side. But where we had the setback exception, that front part of the house, both the basement level and the main floor level are actually exposed to the road. So it would be starting at grade 0, and then it would go up to the back of the hill, back of the house.
So on that north side, though, the concern that I had was being so close. Is that backside then completely covered 2 stories or just the basement area?
It's just a basement and a main level. It's like. a
And you'll
raised
still
wall.
have enough grade slope
Oh, yeah.
away in the
Yeah.
5 feet?
Yeah, from road to the back side of the house, there's probably about 15 feet grade difference, but they're gonna build up. They're not right at ground zero at the curb.
Does that, Craig, does that create any additional liability for the city down the road if that system were to fail? I mean,
I think my initial thought is no, provided that it meets all the international building codes. Okay,
Mhm.
but giving me more than 30 seconds to think about that.
The whole concept.
They can,
seems counterintuitive.
you know, the problem is unique design, unique construction.
Unique materials.
I will say, to put some people at ease, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And ICF is the wave of the future, especially with lumber prices going skyrocketing.
Yeah.
People are gonna keep looking at it, but the really unique principle behind it is you have 2 inches of rigid foam that get damped and waterproofed with the French drain. Then you have your concrete, then you have 2 inches of rigid foam. There's been enough tests that you don't even really need to put the damp proofing on these anyways, but because the code calls for it, we do it anyways. And before we backfill, but we've never had anything fail, if that helps out.
Well, gives you reassurance. How good's your malpractice insurance? You know, but long as they meet the city standard is the International Building Code. And if they go beyond that, French drains, et cetera, that just gives additional protection for the city. So it doesn't really concern me as long as our building inspector does the proper inspections and and as we review the documents, we comply with the codes. I'm comfortable with that.
And Mayor, just so you know, lot 6 in this same subdivision, we're the ones building on that one as well. They don't have the slope issues, but it is also an ICF home. And that's how we came to know this other person that was building. They wanted to know what we were doing.
I guess for me, my instincts kick in when I hear slope butted against the house as opposed to kept away and engineered away from it.
It's still per building requirements. As this gentleman was saying,
Yeah.
it's still required to have slope away from the house. So we will have that, but the hillside comes in. So you have like a valley that's gonna be on the
Okay.
side of the house that drains it around.
And how much slope is there on that side? I think it's fairly light, right?
Up in
Coming
the
into
back, it's flat in the front of the house for the first 30 feet, and then it kind of goes up pretty steep, and then it goes flat again before you get to the hillside. And they're gonna build right into that flat area. So the right side of the house where you guys, that north side, is really the only area of concern.
Yeah.
The rest of the house is gonna be pretty normal,
But
like a standard
and
home.
how much slope is there on the north?
I'd say 4%, 3 to 4%.
Yeah.
It's
It-
pretty gradual.
It seemed pretty,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
fairly
but would that
gradual.
require you going into that private open space
Mhm.
in order to get the grade set properly?
It shouldn't. I mean, without us actually doing the civil engineering part, which would be the site plan. And we were kind of holding off on that. We were waiting for the approval. But Wilding Engineering, who's done a lot of engineering here in Alpine, when we discussed with the engineers there, hey, this is what our plan, this was some of the concepts that he came back with, saying this is where you should put it to get the best drainage. Because we had thought about flipping it and turning it the other direction. As Austin had mentioned, there's a lot of design. Yeah, this subdivision, there's a lot of issues. So we've tried to work it the best we can, because we don't want warranty issues down the road as well. We want to make sure that their basement is completely dry and, you know, it's solid.
Okay, we're also looking at protecting the other people's open space on that side of the.
We should not be encroaching on that other space.
Yeah,
And while you guys are going out and looking at that other place that you want to swap the triangle areas, we'd invite you to come up to our subdivision and check out this building material. It's pretty new, and we're really proud of the stuff that we build. And so by any times, if you want to come by and check it out, it's big white foam buildings. You can't miss them until they put the siding on it. So
Jason, do you have anything?
I don't know. I mean, it's an exception that's being asked for the city. We don't have to say yes to the exception, but obviously we want to work with builders. When it says the exception may be granted by the city council, when the exception will not result in the establishment of hazardous conditions, I wonder, not that this is a hazardous condition, but I wonder if by doing this exception, we're making the lot a little more hazardous than it would otherwise be if we did not grant the exception and had them do what the ordinance says. That's my
We're talking, so.
Yeah.
Continue.
No, I'm sorry.
So I had that same thought. You were gone last week, and this came, or 2 weeks ago. And this is why we tabled it a little bit, because we're concerned about the hazardous situations. We're talking though, 5 feet different. So are we gonna cause it more hazardous, giving them the 5 feet, or getting it 5 feet closer? Or are we gonna cause it less hazardous by staying at that 5 extra feet? We're only making the exception on 5 feet.
I'm assuming that the side that we're decreasing the distance on is going on an upward grade.
Yeah,
So 5 feet could be problematic depending on the amount of grade.
yeah, so we're going from 12-foot setback to a 7-foot
Right.
setback.
and
And
truthfully,
that's
too,
changing the height, how much in that 5-foot setback from.
Yeah, so if it's a 4% grade, and they're gonna have to build that house up higher, that foundation up higher, so that then the slope could go back towards the grade that's coming down this way. That's all we're saying here. So in 7 feet, they're gonna have to go, 6 inches, 6 inches slope this way, but I don't know what the other slope would be that way. So in 12 feet, I mean, you're gonna still have that same, it's gonna still be the same slope. My concern was it is gonna be an open basement. If that's a retaining and the basement is the retaining, I don't have that big of a concern. Because it's just the retaining, and they're not encroaching on the other people's property, making the retaining so close to their property in order to have a window well or whatever, you know, or some kind of exposed basement. So it's probably insignificant to me right now. You'll still have to have the slope away.
so, yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to the situation here. I think that a general comment is our lots are increasingly not big enough for the homes that people want to build on them. This is a 0.31 acre, and it just isn't, you know, you know, beyond slopes and such. I mean, it's wider than the lot than the setbacks allowed, but it's not just this home, right? I mean, it's almost every home coming in. There's a new home that I just reviewed, right? They're to the inch on all 4 sides. I mean, they don't have an inch to spare, right? And it's a half-acre lot. And there's just a lot of these now. Almost every one, I think, is pushing 3 to 4 sides. And I think it's a challenge, especially when there's an awkward shaped lot or a PRD with a small one. But I talked to a guy the other, he's just trying, he says, my architect says if I can get in 10 feet, we can build the house we need. It's like 2 people, right? Half acre, they can't fit it. This is a challenge.
Yeah, so the challenge with those though, Greg, is that usually there's another lot right by it. This is
Oh, yeah,
this is a little bit different in that there's open space.
It's
that-
300 feet of open space,
Yeah,
yeah.
that it's not encroaching on anybody's visual aesthetics, tightening up their view or anything. It doesn't even, on this one, just doesn't.
If I may make a comment too, we did look at, instead of asking for the variance on that side, to do it on the opposite side, shift it this way, but there is a lot for somebody on that side, so we thought we wanted to keep the space between the homes. The one on the right side visually, you could never see it, so that's why we considered that.
Yeah. So Greg, I could go along with if we're getting more and more of these exceptions or requests on places that are next to each other, it just doesn't make sense to give them that exception. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think in any motion, or maybe it doesn't have to be done in the motion, but, you know, I don't think we have to look far to find another example that's similar, not the same situation. But if you look up along Preston, you know, we had a predetermined zoning restriction and we've had an exception to just about every home there. So why do we do that? You know, in this case, I think it may make sense to provide the exception because it doesn't border another house, or because it's up against open space. I think it'd be good to in any motion, whether it's for or against, to explain why in the motion, so that we can establish some type of precedent for future requests if we expect those to come in.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think what makes this special is that it's on, you know, a large amount of open space on this side.
Right.
Were
So
it
on
not
that-
that,
on both sides even. I mean, just
yeah, back end,
Back and
just
side.
north and west,
the
yeah.
whole
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
sides.
So it's less of an impact, and therefore it justifies a look, as opposed to something that may not, if something came in the same neighborhood with the same request, but under different circumstances, we may say no, because it didn't fit that criteria.
And my general comment is this is a 0.31, but when there's homes on a 0.52, I don't think we have these setbacks, but I don't think we really expected generally homes to be 15 feet from the back line, the front line, the other,
On a half acre lot.
yeah, on a whole half acre, right? And this is,
Yeah.
but it's becoming just common. So,
Mhm.
you know, I'm not sure that that's enough back setback or side or whatever, but that's how it is. You know.
It's the new water conservation method.
Yeah,
That's right.
There's no grass to water. I'm gonna remind
True,
council
true.
that we have 20 minutes before this meeting is supposed to come to an end, so
Yeah.
we should push forward.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we that an exception be granted and that a 7-foot north side setback be approved for lot 9 of the Brookside Meadows PRD as requested by the applicant, noting that this is due to open space, not infringing on anyone's view, either side.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Lon, second by Jason.
Correct.
Oh, Greg, I'm sorry. And is there any further comment or question on the motion? Carla, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, without any further question or comments, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody.
Okay, moving on to the next item, the federal funds that are coming our way. I think we can hustle through this one pretty quickly.
Mayor, I move to accept the ARPA funds in the amount of $1,242,445.
Carla, faster than I anticipated.
Hey,
I knew you
Mayor,
were on board.
Can we say we approve resolution 21 dash whatever number it is? Because
Carla,
we
would
have
you like to
drafted a
restate that?
resolution.
Yes, Carla, please, would you restate that?
Oh, hold on, let's see, where, okay, I'm not seeing it in the packet.
Rather than accept, approve.
Okay, I move to approve. What's the resolution number, guys?
2021-15.
2021-15 of the ARPA funds in the amount of 1,242,445.
Okay, we have a motion by
second
Carla, seconded by Greg Gordon. Carla, I knew you were a champion of this cause, so I expected that motion. And to the point that Carla has made several times before, to the public, you know, as in principle, I don't love the idea that we continue to spend money we don't have yet. But the reality is, these funds will go to other cities if they don't come to us. And so we can put them to work here. And I know that we've stated that we have a couple of projects that could qualify, but tonight's vote isn't necessarily to approve a project, it's to approve receipt of the funds, and we'll figure out how to spend them.
Yeah, over
Right.
2 fiscal years. We're not
Yes.
going to receive, and that's in the resolution, 2
Correct.
fiscal years.
Yes, so it's about half and half, right, Shane?
Yeah, and let me apologize, this resolution wasn't in the packet. I went out of town, planning on finishing it, and then we had the water issues hit, but I still. Anyway, you have a copy in front of you today. There's 2 points.
Turn your mic.
Kind of some history, or kind of what this is about, where the funds are coming from. Outlines the 1.2 million and some change. And then the second point, it says that it directs the administration to prepare a list of eligible projects for the expenditure of said funds in compliance with ARPA guidelines for approval by the city council. So this will come back to the city council once we kind of flesh things out and find out if some proposed projects are eligible or not, so.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Any further question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It's a very agreeable council tonight. Okay, that takes us to the final item, which I had asked to be removed from the agenda yesterday, but we didn't get that done in time. So can I get a motion to table item G, please?
I move to table item G, appointment to the planning commission. To allow more
Just a
time.
little bit more time. Yep.
Second.
Thank you. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Excuse me. I'm having a hard time with my voice
Shane?
tonight.
Yes,
Water management plan.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask
yes, that's.
for that right now.
My agenda is not the amendment.
Okay, neither's ours.
That's a good one.
Okay.
But wasn't the electronic out there? Did it get sent out?
Yes, it did. And it's
So-
out on the table and
Okay.
everything, so.
So we do have one more item. not on.
Okay, yeah, it's
Sorry.
not showing up here.
Yeah, so we just, I think the last meeting passed the ordinance to just solidify our water management plan, and then we had to make some changes a short time later. So this bumps it back to 2 days a week, and then just ask people to conserve a little bit more if they can. I don't know if people realize how bad the situation is, and it's not just us. In North Ogden, I've been told that their secondary water is supplied by an outside district. They've been told that they will be cut off August 1st, no irrigation water. And so the cities, they don't have enough culinary water to allow people to irrigate with culinary water. And so the last plan that through an email chain that I heard was they're not gonna allow people to water grass at all. They can water trees, shrubs, gardens, and that's it.
Yeah.
For the rest of the year. And so, Lehigh City back in mid-June, they went to 2-day-a-week watering. There's other cities in lots of issues. And it's a combination of things. There's some mechanical issues going on.
Yeah.
Getting parts for anything right now is difficult. the soil moisture content being so low. And then just the heat just bakes everything. And then on
Could you
top of
explain what's
that,
happening to the pumps?
yeah,
there?
on top of that, our water levels are dropping. So, if you imagine the pump being here, the water level being here, as you pump, it's called the cone of depression, goes like this and pulls down. And, you know, maybe sometimes we have 50 or 60 or 100 feet of water over the pump. We've got pumps where the cone of depression is actually going down to like a foot over the pump. And so we have to shut those down, you know, for fear of burning up the pump. We have had the Healy well down. We're waiting for a part. We got the part. We've got it running. There's still some lagging issue. We're trying to figure out why one leg of power is running higher amps than it should. You know, I've actually scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to look down the road and plan some things out for next year. You know, we're dealing with this year, but we're looking ahead to next year already. We will have the CUP water available at that time. But some changes will need to be made to run the Healy well and take CUP water at the same time. And so we're working through some of those things and how we can kind of firm up the system for next year.
Well, I have a very, very basic understanding of some of these things, but the fact that the water is down so far on our pumps, to me indicates or implies that we're borrowing from years ago. You know, that it's gonna take multiple years to restore that. If the water table is sunk that far down, you know, we're on borrowed water right now.
Yeah, because the aquifer is fed by the snowpack and the rainfall, and almost 100% of Alpine is in the primary recharge area. So, you know, we're kind of up at the head, and
We're in the best spot we could be.
yeah, and I mean, some projects down the road that are being looked at. There's a proposal to purchase part of the West Rock gravel pit by some of the North Utah County cities, so that in the winter flows can actually be diverted into that area, let them flow down through the ground so that they can be pumped back out during the summer.
I had a resident ask me today if it's possible to build a large reservoir up near the rodeo grounds or somewhere in Lambert Park that could even be big enough to not only store water, but to have some degree of recreation on, like paddleboarding, something like that.
Yeah.
Do we have the water rights that would support something like that for storage?
I mean, with the irrigation company water rights on Dry Creek, after the 10th of July, we take 100%. And there's years when something like that would be beneficial. Basically, what our reservoirs do that we have today is regulate pressure, because they fill and empty pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Spanish Fork City built a reservoir, much like you described. They got some money from the Division of Wildlife Resources. They put fish in there, and it's kind of a fishery. They have one end of it's kind of a sandy beach, and it's a kind of a recreation area. There's actually been a few people drowned in it it's probably been in for 15 years, probably 15 years. But they've had some accidents and things up there, but I mean, it's possible. That's something that in updating our master plan that we're looking to see if additional storage would be beneficial. So all of those things are being looked at.
'Cause it feels like to me that if we drill another well, for example, that becomes another source, but it's from the same aquifer. And so it really doesn't help our supply at all. But whereas a storage, like a reservoir could increase our supply.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have an extensive water model that Horrocks Engineers maintains, and we can plug things in, like put another reservoir in and see how the system reacts. And everything's being updated right now with actual use data, based on the metered usage that we've seen over the last 2 or maybe on a few meters, a little longer than 2 years. And so it's taken a little bit extra time to update that, but that's something that we're looking at very closely.
I had a similar question. You know, it seems like, I'm sure it sounds like there's a bunch of things that are being a challenge right now, but you know, it's not necessarily just the amount of water. It seems like when it goes over 100 in prior years too, that's when we run into problems because people water so much more and it kind of pushes the system. So that's where I wondered, you know, would another reservoir give be able to absorb the flux when there's a few days at 100 or something?
Yeah, you have to have the ability to fill that, and that's
Yeah.
what the model will tell you, if it can fill and be beneficial in that way.
That's why I guess if a bigger reservoir, wouldn't that make more sense? Because it takes more to fill it, but it lasts longer once it's full.
Yeah.
Right, but in order to have one big enough, do we have the space?
Yeah, well, so the person who called me today was suggesting a place in Lambert Park, but you know, I guess we'd have to have a place where the city owned enough property to create it.
Yeah, and elevation is critical on these. We were very fortunate when we put the irrigation system in, to own property. It's kind of like the right of way thing we discussed earlier. We didn't have to buy any property at all to install our system. When Highland built their system, they had to purchase the property at the mouth of the canyon, and it cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
That we were able to put into infrastructure back then. But you know, with the current conditions and everything, the system's being taxed like it never has before.
Yeah. Well, and that to me begs the question to Craig, you know, what authority do we have now based on the ordinances we passed, or the ordinance that we passed, the restrictions that we put in place? Are we limited in our authority to enforce what we've passed as an ordinance?
Only by your discretion. The ordinance gives you a civil authority to issue civil citations.
Okay.
First is a warning, second is X, and I don't remember the numbers, I
$50,
apologize.
200, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the answer is yes.
Okay, good.
I think it's in the third paragraph of the ordinance that's before you.
I just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on that so that we feel good about moving forward and enforcing with some degree of enthusiasm.
I'm not
Because
sure.
people are certainly violating with some degree of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So I think we need to approach that.
And that's my question. Yeah, what's the approach to enforcement, right? Is it, I mean, there's some gross abusers, right? But I think if you go after everyone that runs a hose in the daytime, you know, we're gonna have a kind of a, you know, there's somewhere in between there, because I know some people are just not being cautious at all, but then other people might, you know, not be fully compliant.
There are people in my neighborhood who water every night religiously, and a lot.
Right.
Mayor, can we put up the ordinance on there? I didn't print out the email.
We're probably gonna need a motion to move to go. Yeah,
Yeah, you
okay.
got
So
4
then we'll-
minutes.
Then we'll need a motion to adjourn, one way or the other, in 6 minutes.
We need to try and get this water one done
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And I want to just.
Oh, it's
I
gonna
have-
take a lot longer than 6 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think to simplify it, and I think we're already doing this, we
Yeah.
need to move forward with
Yeah.
those citations, with locking boxes and
We gotta
collecting.
pass this
Yeah.
ordinance.
I agree.
We did pass it.
The only thing that has changed, that I changed in this ordinance when I drafted it yesterday, was from 3 days to 2 days. That's the only change I made.
Yeah.
So the ordinance you passed a couple weeks ago,
It's still in force, right?
yeah.
Because that ordinance gave us the latitude to change days,
Okay,
correct?
No, well, we have to change the dates tonight in this ordinance, because it was specifically 3 last time. We changed it to 2
So we have
based
to
on,
vote to do that.
we
You
I
can-
thought
need,
we could,
we need to
okay.
change an ordinance.
I thought we could do that administratively.
no, you cannot.
The thing that I wanted to point out on this or look at, I didn't see, is to Ed's point earlier in the meeting was, what does it have to do with culinary water as well? Which we need to make sure it says in there that it's
It
outdoor
does.
water,
It's pretty
outdoor
clear, I
water
think.
use.
It does in the
Okay.
ordinance. It outlines both culinary and secondary, whatever you use to water the lawns.
I wonder if we can pair this with some educational efforts, right? Because
Yeah.
the enforcement might be the only way we're reaching out, right? But I think a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, they don't
You want it?
they don't see this, they're not aware, strangely, you know.
It is
It's right there,
amazing
I'll show you.
that some of my own neighbors have said that they didn't know we had only 3 days restriction when we've been advertising it
Yeah, 10 years,
regularly
right?
for 8 years or 9
I can't
years.
show you now.
Yeah.
So I've had several people comment to me as well. We would like to help out. We don't feel good about the fact that you're screaming at us right now because we didn't know this. And you're gonna penalize us. And we didn't know how bad the situation was, but we'd like to help out without being made to look like we're really abusers.
And again, just so I understand, the penalties are for watering outside of the designated time and days, right? It's not quantity.
Correct.
Right.
So
We haven't-
the issue we have, and I have gone over, I mean, everyone's got different setups here. To be fair, some people are in a higher pressure zone, you know? I learned, we all pay the same amount for water that goes through the pipe. But some people have a bigger pipe that comes in, they can throw more water out in that period. So those aren't good. Some people, they may have multiple lots in their house. It looks like one lot, but they have 4 lots and they're watering every day. And you're not seeing that water every day because they've broken into 4 lots. Would that have been it? I mean, there's lots of different things that I'm a little concerned that I want to just stay fair. And to the culinary issue, that's a concern I had too.
Agricultural use
Yeah.
might be another.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, and you're right, but then there's a lot of gray areas, and a lot of people will use that gray area and take advantage of it. I guess I'm talking about people who water the same spot on their same lawn every day.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy.
abuse of the system, and especially, I don't know that anybody could claim they were unaware that we're in the worst drought in our history. It's been on every news station. KSL devoted an entire hour to it. Both half hours of their regular news programming was dedicated to the drought and how serious it is. They've also broadcast on Channel 2 and Channel 5 that Alpine specifically has water restrictions in place. And not everybody watches TV news, I get that. But we've also put notices out, mayor's message, notices in the newsline, notices in the water bills. And so it feels like that's an easy thing to say that people are unaware, but it's almost impossible that they would not have seen something on it. And maybe that's unfair of me to view it that way, but it just feels like we've done everything we can to notify.
So the agricultural use, just to touch on that, it's a little bit of a sensitive subject. It took years to kind of chisel out an agreement with the irrigation company to really make this work. I mean, the options were to build a treatment plant to take the shares that the city has, run through it, make it culinary grade water and dump it into the system and continue to, serve both kinds of water through one system. One issue with that, the standard used to be 6-inch pipe. It went to 8. There wasn't really, it would be a major overhaul of the whole system to make that work. So to make the best use of the water, the easiest way to take the surface water and the shares that we've taken through development of a lot of the city was to have the secondary irrigation system. But part of that agreement was 100% of the shares got dedicated to the system, but we had to serve the agricultural users. And there's 3 of them on the management committee and 3 from the city, myself, Lon, and Greg. We had a meeting last week. As per the agreement, there's a section in the agreement that outlines how things are handled when we get in these situations, and that's a meeting that we held last week to determine how to allocate it. They were cut back as well.
Yeah, they were very upfront and first ones on the scene to say, hey, we'll cut it 50%. We're gonna just do it right now, 50%. So The
Past 9 o'clock.
Yeah. So
ag users.
we'll need a motion to either extend the meeting or to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Motion by Jason. Is there a second?
I'll make an alternate motion that we pass this resolution. Or this ordinance that is.
I second it.
Water.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion, an alternative motion, which we have to vote on first to the parliamentary rules, seconded by Carla. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Definitely opposed. I don't think we
Okay,
talked about this enough for what we're doing, but okay.
motion still passes by
Yeah, fast.
3-1 margin. Okay, keep rolling.
I like his motion. then.
We're adjourned then. Oh, I'm-
I second Jason's motion to adjourn.
Oh, you seconded Jason's motion?
No, 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 no. I seconded Lon's. Now I'm seconding his original motion.
To adjourn. Did we vote on the previous?
Yes, 3-1.
That was to adjourn.
that was
No, no,
to-
no, no. 3-1 is to pass the water bill, the water conservation.
Okay, I thought it was to extend long enough to pass that. I thought we were.
No,
gonna
no,
take
no, no,
another
no,
vote.
no. Mm-mm.
That was your intent. Okay, I misread the intent of the motion. All right, so we have accomplished it. Okay, so Jason's motion has been seconded by Carla. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, we have still, it still passes 3-1.